Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So this will be the introduction to the reaction video that I make after the fear and anxiety cleaning playlist sittings are done. And I've already made two voiceovers after day one and day two. And today was day three. I just did the day three sitting. And so I'll do some sort of wrap up as well, and I'll have a reaction to the rest of the days of audio that I put out and other videos and things that I'll just slap together. But the next two audios will be the day one sitting and the day two. My experience of giving the sitting and then receiving the sitting, giving the sitting in the morning, receiving the sitting that evening or that night. Very intense cleaning on the first day, and then very blissful sitting for the second day for me. I want to say there was two comments. One comment where somebody was trying to hype these videos, and I really don't think it's in the best interest of this channel to hype the videos and the people who are coming here, because I want people to have some sort of introduction to the videos and this system. First of all, they have to do the introductory playlist. All of you guys who are doing meditation here have to find that introductory playlist and do the first three initial introductory sittings, because that gets a person started. That's how Sahaj Marg works. And so I don't really want people finding some random video and saying, oh, I have fear and anxiety, I'm going to do this cleaning, because I don't explain how to do the meditation. If you're a person who's found these videos, please go back and find the playlist to do the introductory sittings, because that's how you get introduced to this meditation. It's a series of sittings that introduce a person on a spiritual level so that they can practice the system. And then there's all these other videos in the playlist and things like this, all these other videos that are these playlists, and there's explanations and where you can find literature, and there's PDF books, there's free Sahaj Marg books online, and then there's things you can get on eBay and other places. And so, having an understanding of the system through the literature and through my explanations I give on every playlist, there's explanations of, there's an introductory playlist where I explain everything and how the system works. And then there's the introductory videos, to the system. And so, I don't want these videos hyped. It's better for me, on the Pockets of the Future channel to hype those videos. And people can find out about the system through that. That's, where I make the money to, fund my time here, which this is a volunteer basic channel. I make almost no money on this channel, like $100 a year or something, or $50 a year or something. Nominal. I only monetize videos here so that YouTube will allow the YouTube doesn't run ads during the meditations. So I monetize these videos that I talk and things like this, so YouTube gets to run ads on those videos, and that I could demonetize the ones that are sitting videos so that YouTube doesn't interrupt people while they're meditating. And they still sometimes do that, which I can't control. But so that's the reason I, this channel's even monetized. But in terms of, it's just better for people to come through the Pockets of the Future channel, not show up in some random playlist and video and start doing it. And if people do that, that's fine. If, they can find their way to, the introductory videos, that would be great too. But, it's better if they start off. And there's another comment where someone suggested doing breathing exercises during these videos. And that is not part of the Sahaj Marg system. And so there is something called pranayama, which is moving prana through breath. And Babaji, the second master of the Sahaj Marg system, was Patanjali in a previous life. And he, invented that, or he was the one who brought about the Ashtanga Yoga, the 8 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga. And pranayama was one of those limbs, one of those practices, like the maybe fourth limb, I don't know. But it's not done Sahaj Marg. We have Pranhuiti, which is the transmission. And you're not supposed to mix things. Like the New Age people will often mix and match spiritual practices. And Sahaj Marg is a complete discipline. You don't need anything else. You don't need any other religion and any other practice. The sittings don't need any enhancement. And pranayama was basically forbidden because this first master, Lalaji, was intercommuning with Babaji. And he said, from the time that I was master, people wanted liberation. Like people would come and they would, and that was what they were internally prepared for. So that was like, there's two goals in the Sahaj Marg system: liberation and real God realization. And people really couldn't aspire for realization, but they could aspire for liberation. Liberation's much easier to get than merging back into the source, right? Mukti is liberation, and Layavasta is God realization, where you merge back into the source. Which is, all these things are available through the system. But people, the most that they were kind of, in terms of their orientation to the world, the most that they wanted was liberation. But he said, the generation you're working with, so this is 1945 when Babaji, started to be the master of this, the system. So Lalaji was, the late 1800s through, the early 1900s. He said, your generation, they don't even want liberation, they just want peace. And so there had been a degradation of the human spiritual aspirations and strength. And he said, and they're not strong enough to do pranayama. They're not, it's just, all these things can have a negative effect because there's power in them and whatever it is. And so pranayama was not a part of the system. And it didn't matter because the pranhuti is better, the transmission is better than breathing. Breathing is a physical thing. It involves, the use of physical breath, the use of the physical activity of breathing, whereas the pranhuti works exclusively on a spiritual level, right? It's pranic energy that comes through, the source. But it's important for people to know that the system doesn't need enhancements, and other energetic systems are, not advised. I wouldn't say forbidden, but forbidden. This is an exclusive system. It's simple and it works. Mixing other things will just cause problems. And so I hope people remember that. I've talked about this, I think, in some of the playlists. There's basically 4 parts to the system, and really 2 major parts, which is cleaning and transmission. And, meditation, which the participant meditates, and they also do cleaning, and there's 2 prayers. The 9 o'clock prayer for everyone to come to spirituality, and the prayer that you do before bed. And the prayer is always the same. The prayer is listed: O Master, thou art the real goal of human life. We are yet but slaves of wishes, putting bar to our advancement. Thou art the only God in power to bring us up to that stage. That prayer is said before the meditation. It's not said before the cleaning. And you have your own personal cleaning, and then there's the cleaning that goes on through the preceptor and the master of the system in these gatherings and sittings. And so there's always this cleaning. The person is meditating on the supposition of divine light, God in the heart. So you're meditating in the heart, really in the heart, and you're directing your attention to the heart, whilst you are having this idea that there's divine light, which is really a representation. It's a placeholder for the absolute God, the abstract essence of God, which is hard for people to meditate on. So divine light is given as the object, as something that your mind can grab hold of, as almost like it's light without luminosity. It's not true light. It's not, you're not looking for light, like you're not looking for, the sun or some, light bulb or candle, like something like that is the idea of light, right? So it's an abstract thing. And that idea fades into something more refined. And so that's the idea of the system. And so that's all that's necessary is the cleaning, the the parts of the system where you do a half-hour cleaning, up to an hour meditation in the morning, preferably before dawn, but first thing in the morning, whatever that is. And then you do this cleaning at night, the 9 p.m. prayer, and then the prayer at the prayer before bed. And so, this is an all-encompassing. It takes about, I think, 120 minutes a day or 140 minutes a day or something. Also getting a weekly individual sitting, which we do here usually Tuesday and Thursday, Tuesday and Wednesday, Tuesday or Wednesday, usually Tuesday. I try to do that on Tuesday. And then we all meditate on Sunday together, and then there's these gatherings where there's these group meditations that happen. Of course, they're happening, in spirit, because we're not coming together as a physical group because of the limitations of, the numbers of people here and the lack of an organization. But that's the practice in a whole, and I discussed this in various playlists, which should be, the introductory videos and the introductory playlist, which I explain the practice. There's a video about that. Should be listened maybe every year. I don't know, like just so people who are, you might hear something differently or notice something that you didn't before or forgot something. But the practice is explained there, right? It's, the full practice, in terms of all of the things I'm saying here. And then there's books and things and talks, videos out there. Sahaj Marg YouTube channel has videos of Chargy explaining things and talking about the practice. Many videos are there. So, and there's, other videos out there, and just a desire to connect to it, because sometimes you'll just watch a video and you'll be like, oh, that makes total sense. And that speaks exactly to what's going on with me. Right. So again, people who are coming into this system they start off with the introductory sittings, and I do my best to try to direct people there. Occasionally, I'll mention it in the individual sittings and videos I put up. But like people are often, they don't, people lack discipline. Like we just lack discipline. Understanding that there has to be there's a system in place. It's like a prescription. You're prescribed, well, I don't know, antibiotics or homeopathy or something, and you follow the recommendations. Like you don't say, I'm just going to wing it. I'll take all the pills the first day. I'll take all of them all at once. There's a series, and that that's understandable to people. For any kind of you're following the recipes and the ingredients, and there's chemical reactions between the various foods. Like I make a salsa out of tomatillas and cilantro, and part of it is that you add honey and then you squeeze lemon juice on the honey and the lime juice, and the lime juice reacts with the honey because they have some sort of chemical reaction, right? And it's like there's these things that you do, and it adds to the if you don't do it, if you just put them in separately, right? Like if you everyone understands. Master Chargy once he said, you cut up potatoes and you put them in the water, but if you don't boil them, you're going to eat raw potatoes. Like you have to boil them. That's, you have to boil them for the proper amount of time, whatever it takes, 20 minutes, this kind of thing. So that's the same with Sahaj Marg's system. Everything's done consciously, and there's, an oversight to the system. But if you're just randomly doing things your way or whatever it is, and, like just mixing things, bring other things into it, bringing other energetic systems into it, it doesn't have the desired effect, and it can have a negative effect. It can, the things can react to each other. So, it's something for people to understand that just, you can do other things. We're welcome to, people aren't made to do this meditation. And, my practice was impeccable in the beginning, like when I had more time and, before I got married, had kids and things like this. And then, I used to meditate. I didn't work until like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, something like that, 2 o'clock. And so I'd wake up, I'd meditate, I'd write in my diary, which is part of it as well, part of the practice. And then I would read the literature, so that was my morning. And then I would go do whatever, things I had to do, and then I'd go to work. The days I worked 3 days a week where I'd go in at 2, and one day where I went in at 8. So I couldn't do it on that day. And I'd get an individual sitting from a preceptor on Tuesday. Then there was Wednesday night group meditation. And then there was a Sunday group meditation. And then there was gatherings and things like that. And, I did the practice, pretty meticulously those first years, and then, was disrupted with the chaos of, getting married with someone with already 2 kids and who was already in a kind of a crisis situation. although that all was, like practice suffered. And then, now my practice is different because I've been doing this for years. And so people don't always do the practice to the letter of the law, especially, as the system moves on and you have, things going on in your life. But, it's there for people to do. I do the 9 o'clock prayer almost every night. Probably miss it maybe, 20 times a year or whatever. So, I mean, that's something I get to do. And then, I always do some sort of cleaning, maybe not the half hour that's prescribed anymore, but, it's basically as needed kind of thing. And people, coming into the system, they may not have the time and they're not really convinced, so they don't dive right into it. So, that's all for people to kind of figure out for themselves. But, there is a discipline here, and then, you do your part and the system will do its part. And that's, it's very simple and it's, easily done, and it's, its effects are remarkable for those of us who have stuck with it and have experienced them. Okay, so, here there's going to be 2 voiceovers, like I said, that I've already done, and there'll be more coming, in this video. And again, these voiceovers were done for other videos. I was talking to my normal audience at Pox of the Future, my main channel, about my, physical issues that I was having and that brought about this idea. And so some of these things are just, you get the idea. All right, so here's the rest of the voiceovers. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Sunday, February 22nd. This video is going up Monday night, and then there'll be a day off on Tuesday. And, the whole rigmarole. I'll hopefully post something on the other channel. I'm going through it physically. I'm going to get into that just briefly. I had kind of a breakthrough. I'm much more relaxed about the whole heart thing because I know it's like a part of the spiritual cleaning stuff that happens in Sahaj Marg, and I want to talk about all that briefly in the introduction. So I've been convinced from my experience with COVID that it's a nervous system glitch out, right? That, well, for example, my situation, my resting heartbeat is around 80 beats per minute. So I have a low heartbeat. I have a very slow resting heartbeat, right? And, I'm sure with the meditation, I stay relatively calm, in terms of, you can see I cover stuff all the time that's, sensationalistic, right? And, a lot of energy and stuff that could provoke you to be angry. And, I don't get angry if you guys hear things that are infuriating in our system. What people are doing, Trump right now, Biden before him, not just politically, but across the board. And, there's a lot of end-of-world stuff out there, like I cover it. In ways that, for most people, you guys don't think about it the way I would think about it, more intensely. I really dive into the stuff, right? I'm not, there's always some level of detachment in the Sahaj Marg system from material life, which is great, but I'm also more and more sensitive because doing the meditation. When you do the Sahaj Marg meditation, you become more and more sensitive over time. So both things can be true, like you're more detached, so things don't affect you as much, but what you do connect with, you absorb it on a deeper level. But anyways, going back to my blood pressure thing, this is stuff I don't think about. Like I don't know what my blood pressure is. They take it, I don't even look at it. If I go to a doctor or something like that. And so, now I know, but because I've been checking it a lot, that my resting heartbeat is somewhere in the, high 70s, low 80s. And then when I exercise, it gets into the 90s, when I'm out of breath and things like that. And so I went from that to 240 beats per minute. And again, it's not something I care about. And, maybe you, because it didn't happen to you, it's not real for you, but that's fucked up. It was like a switch was thrown. That something triggered my body to do that, right? I didn't even know my body could do that. I didn't know my heart could go that high. And, it was something that you could just, it was like, it wasn't something you could ignore. It just happened. My fucking heart is racing. I'm not paying attention to that. You don't pay attention to your breath or your heartbeat. And then all of a sudden you have to, and you can't breathe for COVID or something like that, right? But I knew it wasn't the heart, right? So my heart just didn't decide, hey, guess what? I'm just going to fucking rev up. Just going to open it up for you. I'm just going to, you know, go max. I mean, that didn't happen. And so, I've been saying all along for years now that the COVID stuff and the vaccine stuff is about the nervous system, right? You have people who have cardiac arrest just out of the blue, like their heart just fucking stops, and are revived. And then they don't have a heart issue after that. Like they were, they're athletes or people who have good cardiovascular health, and they have a cardiac event, like a big one, and they're out back doing their thing shortly thereafter. I mean, probably they keep them longer than they should because they're pretending it's to do with the heart. Like, why would your heart do that? Like, your heart doesn't choose its beats, right? It's not, there's a electricity involved, like in your heart's, and that's why they put pacemakers and shit in there, right? And so, this whole thing has always to me been about the nervous system. This spike protein, right, does something to you to make your nervous system glitch out, right? That's, again, I'm not offering medical advice, but that's this is for my personal, what I believe personally. And so when I went to this chiropractor, this holistic chiropractor, I can't do allopathic medicine. And this guy in the place helped me get through COVID. Like, I went in there and my testosterone was low. I was on the verge of being diabetic. I was pre-diabetic. My thyroid was suppressed. I can't even list all the things. This was just what the blood work revealed. I couldn't do work. Like, if I was out in the pasture and we were putting in a fence and we were nailing a fence to fence posts, and you have to nail the bottom of the fence to the fence post. And I was fine when I did the top ones. But when I would tip my head and bend over, my energy would just be zapped. I'd have to stop. Like, this is probably 2 or 3 months after having COVID. Like, I was just, wrecked. And, COVID had ravaged my body and taken away my health. Like, I was a 2 out of 10 in terms of my health. Like, just really in bad shape. And they helped me. And, some of the things that they did or introduced me to, or, some of the things I knew already, I, did more research and I, got my own supplements and I started to figure things out more for myself, right? But the blood work was important because it revealed a lot of these things. But the blood work doesn't really talk about the nervous system. And there's very little known about the nervous system, little known about the glandular system, which are very important in the Sahaj Marg teachings about, the body and health and things like this. But I knew that this is a nervous system reaction, right? So I looked it up last night, but I'd already ordered some stuff to do with the nervous system, various tinctures and things like this, which are coming today. Should be here in the next couple hours. But I asked ChatGPT what regulates the heartbeat. And the heart is, and this is the answer. The heart is regulated primarily by the autonomic nervous system, which includes the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. The sympathetic nervous system increases the heart rate during stress or physical activity, while the parasympathetic nervous system slows it down during rest. Additionally, the synovial node at the SA, often called the heart's natural pacemaker, generates electrical impulses that set the pace of the heartbeat. Hormones like adrenaline and factors such as body temperature, fitness level, and emotions also influence the heart rate. And so, I was thinking about this thing, the SA, the synovial, whatever it is, I don't know. My wife told me how to pronounce it last night. I've lost it. But this thing that regulates the heartbeat, right? And that's what should have been focused on. Like, I'm doing all this stuff to do with my heart. My heart showed that it can, go up to a high level twice now in terms of heartbeat and, without any really, just go back down, right? It hasn't been any issues. It's not a heart problem. I don't have a family history of heart issues and just all the rest of it. And, which I said before, like, longevity in my family and then not heart issues. But there is nervous system, there is glitching out, and I have the migraines, which is, vascular in some way. There's congestion, vascular congestion. There's things like that I have, but like not the fucking heart thing. And so, which is, again, I'm focusing that now. I've got older, and it's there for me to focus on. Taking supplements and exercising, and I've talked about that in the past. But it's really the nervous system, because something in my body decided to say, you need to fucking, it was like the fight or flight response was given, and you need to, your heart needs to go. You need to go. I mean, I'm not running. I'm not fucking fighting, right? One time it happened in the morning when I was in the middle of doing one of these voiceovers, and there's zero reason for it to go and be triggered like that. Why would it be triggered? Why would I need that thing to go, right? Like what would make that thing, um, like there was no reason for me to be in, to have an accelerated heart rate at all. Like I'm just sitting here talking. I was in the middle of a sentence, and my heart just went full max. Like, and I'm like, what's going on, right? Because something in my body decided to do that. It decided to, flip a switch. And then the night 2 nights ago, I was really in a good mood. I was exercising. I'd exercised a little while ago, some things like that, but that wasn't like what caused it. I was doing maybe probably contributed, but I did the jump thing. But it was probably half hour after that. I had just taken the dogs outside, and I was eating something. I was eating a snack, and boom, I was eating my late night snack thing that I eat, and boom, it just took off. Like just no reason. Like nothing's going on. I wasn't stressed out. I wasn't watching anything stressful. There's no adrenaline. There's nothing that would there's no necessity for my heart to even go up a little bit. Like there's no reason for my heart to go up 20 beats, to go up to 100, like from 80. Like there's nothing there. There's no stimuli. I wasn't having any thoughts about anything. I wasn't feeling anything stressed. But my nervous system, the SA, just decided to say, hey, let's crank it up, right? So I have this book. It's I've talked about this book before. It's an herbal book by here. I went and got the book. It's called the Free Food and Medicine Worldwide Edible Plant Guide. Every living thing has a purpose, even weeds. And it's by this guy Marcus Rosecrans, and he's this California guy, blonde, fucking. He's got some kind of blonde girlfriend or wife, and they do weird shit. Like I had known about the guy for a while, and he's a vegan and just whatever. An older guy who tout young he looks and all this stuff. But he wrote a good book here, and we use this book all the time. And it has various medical conditions, and it has all the plants that have an effect on that condition. And there's some plants that just do so many different things. There's the evening primrose. There's pine pollen. These things are like real superfoods. And again, I'm not recommending anything, but they address so many different physical issues. Tulsi is a plant like that. The ashwagandha and some of these other things. And I looked it up. I looked up the nervous system. And valerian was on there, and I read what he wrote about valerian, what it does, and I was like, well, it's good that I'm taking that. And my wife remembered that, which I was grateful for, because I completely forgot about it. Valerian is something that has a very strong effect on me. Like I took 2 pills the night I was having I slapped on a bunch of melatonin cream, and I usually take just a touch. Like I'm very sensitive to the melatonin, but I took a ton of that. I'm doing anything to get get my heart rate back down. And then I took these 2 valerian, and I knew afterwards I was going to be like loopy. Like, it makes me, it's almost like it's a mild version of Valium, and it's, I'm sensitive to it. So but I didn't care at the moment, and then it kicked in, right? So, like my heart comes down, then I'm like, oh, like I'm completely out of it now from, melatonin and valerian. But then I looked up other things. Some of the things I had already ordered some tinctures for, this nervous system, and like just getting that under control, right? So, what's making my nervous system think that I have to get my heart rate up, right? So, there's a COVID thing, which is always a problem, because it's fucked up. It's like it's a biological weapon, and it's there to, attack the reproductive system in some way or another. Through the heart, through these various things. Like it's a depopulation I mean, this is what I believe COVID was, and of course the spike protein is there so that people stop having babies, whatever it is. Also with the Wi-Fi, these things, and the Wi-Fi can make you glitch out too. Like your Wi-Fi is a part of that, right? It's not just. It's just like with the bee colony collapse syndrome. It's not just one thing. It's not just pesticides. It's the electromagnetic pollution that's going on. It's all these things, right? It's a combination of stuff that's detrimental to your physical and spiritual health. And one of the things they have this machine that's like there's a way that you can do this thing called muscle testing where you you hold something in front of your gut, and because there's the chakra there, right, your food chakra there, and you hold it with one hand and you put out your other arm, and if you feel weak, if somebody else pulls down your arm, this thing isn't good for you. And my wife was saying she went to this guy who was an acupuncturist who used a muscle test, and he'd find out what you were weak on, and whatever you were allergic to, and try to work to reverse that, which I thought was a great thing. But this place was doing muscle testing to see which supplements you should take, the ones that are things that you should do, and they have a machine to do it, and they say the machine's better and more accurate, but I don't believe it to be so, because it's adding a machine and electricity. They put a thing on your finger, and then with your other hand you hold the supplements. And I mean, it's similar, but I don't think it's as good, because where humans can have, where you're just especially if you're intuition or whatever. But this girl was saying I shouldn't take ashwagandha, and ashwagandha is one of the biggest things that comes up for the nervous system, and I was kind of bummed because I then muscle tested it with my wife, and totally said I should take it, right? But people have their way of gathering information and figuring out how to solve a problem, but they haven't really figured out. And this place has a protocol for spike protein. This guy talked about this doctor. We talked about this before. And, you have to. I mean, sometimes you have to get them out of their mindset, their script. Healthcare providers, and do your own. I mean, it's just we live in a time where, people aren't. They don't listen to you. They don't listen to the patient. They come from a position that they know more, and they do know more because it's their job, but not about your specific physical body, right? But anyways, so that all happens. So I'm, thinking about this nervous system and glitching out. And the other piece of this is the Sahaj Marg system uses physical crises or physical issues to advance your spiritual journey. I mean, it's something that's always been there. Before every gathering, I'd get sick. When you're traveling, it sucks getting sick when you travel. I got sick at my first gathering when I saw the master. I met Master Chargy for the first time, and I felt like shit. I just wanted to leave. I wanted to quit. I was like, I was shivering. They had this big tent where we all slept in these big tents, and it was August in fucking Atlanta, right? And I'd lived in Atlanta, and during the summer, I mean, I figured I'd be so hot, so I just brought a thin blanket. Like, I didn't bring a sleeping bag, and I had one sweatshirt. And it just got fucking cold as shit, especially at night. I mean, it was really fucking cold. And I got sick, and my nervous system, I had headaches and body aches, and emotions were coming up, and I was like, oh my God, I'm fucking miserable. I didn't, understand the idea of a cleaning. It was my first time. And I was just like, I can't, this is fucking too hard. I mean, it was like I was getting physically broken. I'm like, 29 years old, 30 years old, right? So, I was in good physical shape, but I'm like, fuck this, right? And then the last day was pure bliss. Like, I felt so great. I'm like, oh my, I can't wait to come back. And then I went through that quite a bit. And so physical issues and, things like that are always a part of the Sahaj Marg system, right? Just to go back here for a second, and we'll come back to what I was saying. This idea that you're holding these things in front of your gut. Your gut there's the intelligence of the gut, the intelligence of the heart, intelligence of the brain, but there's also these chakras. And, like Christians, when I say Christianity is remedial, it's because the same people that discovered the soul discovered these chakras, right? Like, if you read ancient Indian spiritual literature and things that were discovered in the Vedas They have this idea about things, the different, I want to say doshas. There's, here, I just going to read this. Ayurvedic doshas, the vata, the pitta, and the kapha are three fundamental energies, constitutions derived from five elements: ether, air, fire, water, earth, that govern all the physical and mental processes. They have all this stuff, right? This information. Um, there's also let me just find that as well. The um, the third essential quality, they have this stuff called sattvic, which is purity and balance; tamasic, which is inertia and darkness; and rajasic or rajas, representing active energy, passion, and restlessness. And sattvic is the best, and tamasic is the worst. But people can be tamasic; they can be they can be rajasic; they can be sattvic. They have all these different things, right? Like all this knowledge about spiritual knowledge that's to do with energies, and they have all this stuff. This yogic, there's all this yogic um, knowledge. I have some of it. Like I can't even remember these names. Like I've read it and I kind of understood it. But that's what I talk about Christianity being remedial, because the place that the people that discovered the soul, which almost all religions believe in the soul, right? This idea of the spirit, and they also had all this information that came with it, including chakras. But Christianity, because they don't want to become spiritual, they want to keep it remedial. Jesus knew about chakras, right? Like he knew about you. So, they don't want you to. So they say, oh, that's just satanic. Don't pay attention to that. That's just Hinduism. That person that wrote to me and say, oh, you're into that New Age. But it's not New Age stuff. It's the ancient things that's the basis for all religions. It was discovered in India, and they had this knowledge, this yogic knowledge. And, like I know very little about it. Like I know it exists, and there's parts of it that are taught in Sahaj Marg. And like I know what I need to know, but, getting into these healthcare, if you look at Chinese medicine, the acupuncture, like all these things, like there's this energy, like there's energies and things that go on in the body. And the Bible and the people that lived there were fucking very gross, that lived in that area where Jesus was, in the Old Testament area, are very gross, very materialistic, very remedial, like the King of Kings, right? They look at kings and being powerful and materialism, and that's how they view God, right? Again, as a impetuous, narcissistic, fucking demonic king, and everything else is satanic. Everything that's just like in the Idiocracy movie, where they call everybody who's can use three syllable sentences, syllable words, and long sentences. They call them gay, right? They use the F word, like because like you're talking with like intelligence, right? Anybody who's smarter than the average dumb fuck is gay, right? And so which is kind of a funny part of the movie, but that's how it is. Like so. Like it's your thing is remedial. Like it's Christianity is remedial because they don't have all this stuff, all this knowledge, and and maybe you need the knowledge, and maybe you don't, depending on who what your perspective is. But the knowledge is valuable. It's not satanic, just because you don't offer it. Like not everybody needs it, but it should be there for people who do, and it is it is like there's truth there. I mean it's the basis of the initial discoveries that created the discovery of the soul, and the discovery of zero or nothingness and things like this, right? The discovery of the elements of the truth about our existence, our soul-driven existence, right? But anyways, getting back to it, in the Sahaj Marg method, illnesses are part of like how you grow spiritually, and just physical discomfort. There has to be some of that to lead to spiritual evolution. And so whenever I'm going through something, I look at it as what we call a cleaning. And so there's the element of the whatever happened with the fucking spike protein and me getting COVID, but I don't think it's an accident that I got COVID 3 times. I haven't had a lot of illnesses. Like I said, I got really sick. I had food poisoning in India, and the water was just, I could feel the water going in my stomach and then going down my intestines and coming out the other end within about, you know, a minute. Like literally, I would drink water and it would literally just flow right through me. And I'm like, well, I'm going to fucking die of dehydration, right? Like I ate this fucking street food stupidly, and then I got really sick, but it wasn't an accident. It was when I was made a preceptor and I was going through this cleaning. And I got to the point where I'm just like, I'm either going to die or I'm not, right? And, this is when I'm, my first trip to India, I'm probably 31, so I'm in, good physical shape. And I already was going through it. I was restless and just irritated. Everyone was fucking pissing me off. Like all this stuff, all this toxic stuff was coming up, right? Shit that needed to be cleaned, spiritual grossness that needed to be cleaned so I could be made a preceptor. And I just got really sick, and I'm like, all right, you're not digesting water. When you don't digest water, like I wasn't a big healthcare person, but I knew like I couldn't fucking, and I wasn't talking to anybody. I wasn't like asking to go to a doctor. I was just like, which is stupid because there's a lot of people that do healing there. But a couple of days went by, and I was, there's this Russian girl I was kind of traveling with. We were in Calcutta, and we were about to head back to the ashram. And a few of us stayed a little bit longer. And she was like, why don't you get some coconut water? Because that's like, you have these coconuts on the street. And they cut them open, they give you a big straw. And they're really good for dehydration and other things. And I was able to keep it down. Like and I started drinking this coconut water, and it really helped with my gut. And I just started to eat again, and I was better, so. But for 3 days there, it was like, fuck, I was so weak, and I was just like, this is bad, but, there's a spiritual element to it, right? There are things that you go through in the Sahaj Marg system where you think you're going to be ruined. They might be a financial situation or just you're pushed to the precipice, and it seems like you're going to fall over the cliff. And then, like with this, just like with the thing I was saying about, like a snap of the fingers, my heart rate went up to 250 beats. Like with snap of your fingers, it's over. You're like, well, that's over. I thought I was going to go over the cliff, and then it was just like it disappears like it never fucking happened, right? And so that's one of the kind of neat things about it. And so, I did these sittings. I had this idea to do these sittings where it would focus on cleaning out fear, right? Like I thought about fear and anger and hatred. I'm going to do anger and hatred. And then the next few months, I'll do one of these playlists. And I did an introduction and on the Gratefullness meditation channel, and I did the sitting as a preceptor, and then I was going to take the sitting as an abhyasi, as a meditator, last night. And so going into it, I had taken a couple of these valerian pills because, I wanted to make sure that my nervous system was settled. So I had taken one in the afternoon and one like with dinner or later on, maybe before bed when I had a snack. And I was taking melatonin and this, rescue remedy, which is a black flower thing. And I took an ashwagandha too, because I'm doing everything I can to support my nervous system. And, whenever I take melatonin, it makes me really tired. And I take a magnesium pill at night, and it also makes me very tired. Like, so going into bed, I'm really tired. My wife had already gone to sleep, and I was planning to do the sitting, so I went to bed a little bit early before I was really tired. And it was a 25-minute sitting, and, short. They're usually a half hour. And I went out for about 10 minutes, and then I came back, and my whole body was racing, everything but my heart. Like I was having like an adrenaline rush. It's like, and this, this idea that fear is being pulled up and cleaned out. In the Sahaj Marg system, sometimes the deepest impressions, the heaviest grossness is buried deep inside you. Like it's pushed back. Babaji gave the example of if you're cleaning a pool, the stuff on top of the pool is just floating there as light. The stuff at the bottom pool is heavy. Like you got to fucking get in there and scrub it and get it out of there or whatever it is. It's stuff that sinks to the bottom. It's harder to remove than the stuff on the surface, right? I was telling my wife, Master Charji, the third master of the system, he was impeccable about, he was very perfectionistic about his practice, right? And, he had been practicing for a while, and he was going to be Babaji's successor, and he was on higher levels of spirituality. And Babaji pulled out some deep grossness, and he was like kind of pissed off about it because he was like, why is that there? I'm not doing anything. I'm doing everything the way I'm supposed to. And I've been, Babaji had been working on him for years, probably, 10, 12 years. Been cleaning out his internal system. And Babaji said, this thing I just told you, that this stuff is buried and needs to be pulled up. And I haven't felt real any fear or anxiety in years. Like, I mean, nothing that's just not normal kind of situation. But I'm very calm. Like, anger comes up more for me than fear. And I don't really have, I mean, I used to be a very angry person. And I used to have, like, panic, some kind of fear responses. And I don't have those pretty much at all. Like, I mean, I get, I get unsettled. I glitch out from time to time or whatever it might be. But not like, some kind of panic or fear response. And like I'm having that, right? I'm doing the sitting and it's like I just snorted fucking lines of coke. Like I used to drink chai and I would just do the slightest bout of pinch of black tea. And now I do the, carob. I was eating some chocolate. I have ways of, I need to, I'm kind of lethargic. And so I'm so sensitive to caffeine or any kind of a stimulant. And so, and sugar or any of this kind of stuff. And it wasn't, well, as a kid, I used to be able to drink sodas. And I used to be able to drink like, fucking Mountain Dew. And, I mean, I never drank Jolt, but I remember drinking coffee for the first time and I was like wired. But I was able to deal with caffeine a lot better, where I'd have lots of it. I could eat a whole candy bar. And now I take, like, we have these little, these, these firecracker chocolate bars or dark chocolate with some Pop Rocks and some pepper in them. And I really like those. And I take just like a, like a pinch, like, it's the size of a dime, like that much. And that, that really spikes my energy level. And, yesterday, and the same thing with the melatonin and the valerian. If I can't take like aspirin, I can't take like ibuprofen, I can't take any kind of like what people take for headaches and whatever it is. I mean, the valerian even, like I still get the migraine and I still get the effects of the migraine, and then the valerian will make me nauseous and make me loopy. And so, I took a bunch of the valerian or 2 pills, and I took a, melatonin, and I had taken, I mean, just a bare minimum of the carob, not the carob, it's cacao. So I have this cacao powder. I've been talking about making the cacao, and I drink hot chocolate, and it's, and I did half of what I usually would do because I didn't want to get a headache. I didn't want to just like have withdrawal from it, and but I didn't want to spike my energy level. And I had some at breakfast and I have some at lunch, but I hadn't had some in hours. And it's late. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning, and so I should be exhausted. I should be tired. I should be sleeping, and I'm fucking wound up. But my heart's not racing. I go out and I check my, after I did the sitting, it's like I'm flying, like I just like fucking had some kind of big stimulant, and I've had all this other stuff that's just the opposite. I mean, the melatonin, as soon as I take a little bit, I have to fall asleep. I mean, it's just, I mean, it's a bare minimum of it. And then I might sleep so much I get headaches. I sleep deeply, and then the next day I'm lethargic, and it takes me a while to get going. It might even be, in my system all day. I can feel the melatonin, right? So, and I'm like fucking flying. And it's like I'm having a panic attack. And, at the end of the video, I talk about how, some of this stuff can be pulled out from, deep recesses, things that are being stirred up, fear being stirred up to be cleaned off, right? And so you might have a panic attack or something before doing the cleaning. I mean, the majority of people are going to do this. It's going to be, these meditations, a series of meditations to go in and do deep cleaning on the fear, fear in your system. Usually you're going to be feeling fear ahead of time, or you're not going to want to do it, right? You're like, you're not going to think you need it. And so, but I'm just like, it's like I'm having a panic attack, kind of, like energy attack. I mean, I just completely wound up. I go take my pulse and it's like 78. And, and then I kept on meditating for about another hour, and I'm just flying. Like, it's just all this stuff is being pulled up and cleaned out. I did some more personal cleaning and I meditated, and I can't go to sleep. Now it's like 2:00 in the 2:30 in the morning, and I get up again to take my pulse because I thought my heart was starting to race because I felt like in my stomach I was having a spasm or something, and I'm having like trouble walking. Like I'm like my stomach's all erratic, and I'm having like a panic attack in the gut. And I was so grateful that my heart wasn't beating really fast because again I'm having this reaction. My nervous system is triggering this like fight or flight or fight response. I'm having this kind of panicked it wasn't just like panic, it was energy. Like I just have this energy surge. It's like 2 in the morning. I'm exhausted, and like I'm having trouble walking. I'm just like whatever. My wife's waking up, seeing if I'm all right. I'm like, yeah, my heartbeat's fine, and then I get kind of cold, and I decide to take a bath, and I like throw up, and often when it's like when I have a migraine, my body just glitches out, and sometimes I'll get cold when I have a migraine. I'll like have shivers, like it's a nervous system thing, and I'm having that response, and I throw up and I feel better. Like I'm just, I go back to normal. The energy dissipates. I take a bath. I get my body temperature up, and I go to bed. I slept great. And and I realized that this is nothing to do with the heart. Like I said, I mean, the heart was, a symptom, the rapid heartbeat, but it also is completely related to a cleaning. Like I'm going through what we call cleaning, and it sucks. I mean, it's not like a great thing, but at the end of it, it's always better. And certainly, if I had all this buried fear that I was unaware of, and having it cleaned out is a good thing. So that was my thing, and I feel kind of positive about it because, I've been through these things before, these physical crises, and whatever they are, and they suck to go through in the beginning, but afterwards, I just feel I'm just my spiritual journey is deepened, and so I feel like I got a hold of this thing, and I'll talk more about it as it progresses. I'm gonna go for a walk with my wife and eat breakfast, and then I'm gonna do the second sitting, and then we'll come back to this. Anyway, so that's my thing, right? And I don't think I'm kind of eager to move on and get going with the day. So, but I really want to emphasize this. Like there was a switch that was thrown. The part about knowing it's the nervous system, but also that this isn't some random thing that's happened to me. It isn't some physical health crisis. It is something that's being that I'm going through to facilitate my spiritual growth, which is, once I know that, it gets better, it gets easier. Like it's not something where something's wrong that I have to fix it. Like I just have to endure this thing, and then it'll just go away, right? Like it's just, with migraines, like I get migraines every once in a while. I get, have these things, and after a migraine, I'm like at my happiest. My serotonin level spikes, and all these other things happen. And so, it's not just about being happy. It's about, cleaning things out that need to be cleaned out so I can evolve spiritually. And, there's a price that nothing's for free. Like nothing, comes easily. If anything that's great or worthwhile, there's always a price. And these physical issues are a part of the price in the Sahaj Marg system of spiritual evolution. Anyways, we got some more things to cover here, but so I'll do that, later on today. Okay, just I want to add one more thing here. So, when I had the heart thing, I just wasn't able to sit down and meditate. Like I mean, when I sat down, I was physically uncomfortable, and I was doing the sitting, basically standing up, without, I didn't want to get absorbed and topple over. But the one night I was just, doing a meditation, basically standing. And you can kind of have walking meditations. I mean, it's not part of the Sahaj Marg method, but I just couldn't. I was too restless and too physically uncomfortable, and my gut was swollen. I just I just couldn't do it. But last night my everything was racing, but my heart, and I was able to meditate and sort of just separate myself from what was going on with my body, like just distance myself and still be focused, but on the meditation and cleaning and just allowing my body just to go, to flip out, to glitch out. And that, was a big step. Like that gave me sort of confidence with the rest of the thing. Anyways, Larry, so that's it. I just want to add that one thing. And, I'm feeling really good now. It's 10:38. I'm about to do the sitting. And then I got some other stuff to get to here. But definitely a positive situation. All right, here is the other stuff. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Monday, 23rd of February. Um, this video's not going up till tomorrow morning. I'm taking today off. And so I just, quick health update, and then we'll get into the other stuff. So all these tinctures that I had ordered and the stuff that someone had told me about a homeopathic remedy and another tincture of hawthorn leaf, which somebody else had mentioned, in terms of COVID. Again, I'm not recommending anything, but all the stuff for my nervous system showed up. I started taking all of that yesterday, Sunday. So maybe it showed up late Saturday. I'm not sure, but I started taking the stuff. And the sittings are going good on the other channel about the anxiety and fear. I'm glad I'm doing that. And I did the meditation, did the sitting during the morning, gave the sitting, and then took the sitting in terms of meditation later on in the evening last night, and it was really blissful. No reaction. And then I meditated and did cleaning before going to bed, and I slept for a couple hours. I woke up really energized, and I was sort of worried my heart thing was going to happen again, and it was like a kind of a burst of energy, like 3 o'clock in the fucking morning. So it's just weird stuff going on with me physically, man. I believe that spiritually, there's some kind of spiritual thing, some kind of cleaning thing. And my heart started to go. My heart started to beat a little bit faster, but I didn't think it was, like it wasn't the 250 beats per minute that was like, crazy. And I went out and I put on the monitor. As soon as I stood up, it started to dissipate. And I put on the heart monitor, and it was my oxygen levels were fine, and it was like at 112, which is high for me. And then it immediately started to go down. Like I was looking at it's a thing that's a little finger stick. It goes on the finger, and immediately went down to 90, whatever it was, my normal heart rate. So I felt good about that part because I had this energy surge. It was like all the other things, the 2 times that my heart had raced. So I'm having that, and my gut is like I'm not eating anything. My stomach was empty, but it just bloats. That's something that happened when I had COVID, and that it's putting pressure on my I don't know what's happening with that, but I feel like my nervous system is now being calmed down by the whatever the focus stuff. I don't know if it was necessarily like a panic attack because I didn't feel like a surge of fear. There was some anxiety when it happened again. But so that lasted for about 15 minutes, and then I was just sort of awake, and then I just meditated, and I woke up like I slept through the night. I fell asleep in a meditative position, which is just sitting upright, and then I woke up after that. So like in the morning. So it's not great to have your body like glitch out. Like it's sort of similar to the migraine. I think it's connected to me getting migraines, but at least the heart thing seems to be under control. Like it's happened a couple times now where I've had that, whatever's happened to me that's making that triggered the heart thing. It seems like that's under control. At least my nervous system is, not triggering that weird thing. Like it's a weird thing to trigger. So anyways, I'll probably do an update tomorrow and put it at the end of this video. But let's get into the other stuff here. I've gone through things physically. Like like I haven't, I'm 60 years old. I haven't had cancer. I haven't had any major thing. I've had, with the COVID stuff, and the one time I got food poisoning in India, I had mono when I was a kid. No broken bones, broken bones. I've had ongoing migraines and other things, and some health issues, allergies when I was a kid, and things like that, lingering things. But I've learned to deal with them. I don't focus in on them. When your heart rate goes up that severely, it's it's of concern, obviously. But I don't know what the underlying cause is, and I don't know if there's something going to happen. Um, war with Iran is pending. We could have a solar flare any day. Like this whole thing, the Whispers of the Brighter World prediction. That's for this Saturday, or at least if it's to the day, it's this Saturday. But it's going to be happening anytime now. So you know, like those things that are out in the material world, and then there's just whatever is going on with me physically, or just these kind of things. But it's now become kind of normal. Like I'm just talking about it here because of the severity of the heart thing and the um, concern that I had about it, my wife had about it, and you guys would need to know. Like if I just stopped making videos all of a sudden, but it doesn't seem like it's anything but just some kind of a glitch out. All right, so with that in mind, let's get into the other stuff here. Okay, Tuesday, February 24th, I just completed the fourth sitting in the series, and some ideas came to me, things that I thought I should share um, at the beginning of the sitting. So the first part is that, one of these things is going to be about the tendencies of the mind. But before I get to that, I want to say that the series of sittings, the cleanings happen when you're doing the sitting, but it keeps on going throughout the whatever it is, the gathering or this whatever this online seminar is. And so it's pulling for, the cleaning and the transformation and the intentions that are here. Like you're creating intentions of wanting to have, fear and anxiety that's unnecessary, unnatural to your system to be cleaned off, right? Like you feel like you have fear and anxiety that's causing a problem. And so you have an intention to have that cleaned. Like it's why you're participating in this. And then the system itself is working to create that. And it's going to be different for each person. So the sittings will be, changed and adapted to each person. And so during the process of these gatherings and these these playlists, it's a whole thing. Like you go through a whole thing that it's not just when you're meditating. It's when you're sleeping. It's during these other times. Like stuff's coming up and it's being pulled out, and it's the sitting keeps on going till the next sitting, and then that and all of the things that are being done. And the sittings are going to target different levels of the fear, right? The things inside of you, some scars. Each sitting, has a different intention. I'm using my knowledge of the Sahaj Marg system, but also intuition and being guided by the, what we call the divine master. The perfect version of you that's within you, the divine version of you, the pure expression of your soul at the highest level, right? Where you're, something that you're reaching to achieve at some point and have in some, future timeline and some, in some, etheric way outside of this life. Your ultimate, you have a, you have an ultimate expression of yourself in the future that you connect with, right? And that, that's, part of the Sahaj Marg way and system to help you facilitate that connection with that version of you, what what you're ultimately going to become, right? Like when they say, when a sculptor says they look at a rock and they carve out everything that's not whatever they see in the rock, right? Whatever the art is, and it's like that kind of a thing. So, but people should be aware that this is going on when you're not meditating, that this is a whole process you're going through. And like I said, each of these sittings, like some of these sittings were about some scars and past traumas, past life traumas and things that you experience. And the sitting today was about worries and mental attachment to fear. Like, people like to be fearful. Like they go to horror movies and they bungee jump and they do things because they like to feel alive. They like fear. But then there's, there's that's one thing. But then there's people having worries and having mental fears, right? There's the emotional fear that happens in your gut where you feel the expression of fear, right? You feel the fear in you're emotionally, something scares you. and you feel this overwhelming feeling of fear in your system coming from the gut, right? The emotion of fear. But then there's mental fears, like people who are very, focused on, worried about doom and disaster, and this thing's going to happen, and just constantly dwelling on the negative and the possibility, the impending doom, and or thinking about something, right? And so that creates some scaras, more fear, and it creates this, these tendencies to have a fear-based life where you're not, living your life because you're worried about this might happen or that might happen, and then, all these things that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You start creating those things because the mind is so powerful in its ability to manifest things. And so the fourth sitting was to help create, to remedy these tendencies. But people have to work on this themselves. Like, it's something that everyone should be aware of. Like, I'm going through this physical issue, where my heartbeat raced to 250 beats a minute. And, now I'm worried that that's going to happen again. And I have all these people, and I think most of them are well-meaning, but they're diagnosing me, and they're saying you should do this and you should do that, and and the allopathic medicine, if I got diagnosed with something, and then I get a second opinion and something else, and next thing you know, I'm not living my life, right? I'm worried I'm gonna, I gotta protect my heart. I can't get I can't go exercise. I can't, all these things, and so, those things aren't helpful. I'm going to talk about that in a separate audio to my viewers on my channel. I'm going to include this audio as well. But it's the tendencies of the mind and the power of the mind. Worries are not good. Like, worries are, not only will there could be self-fulfilling prophecy, but it creates all those other things like cortisol and all the stuff that happens when you get into stressful situation. It's mental stress, right, where people psych themselves out. Negative suggestions, and you're being given negative suggestions all the time. You're being told things in a way that inhibits your existence, and you start focusing your mind on those things, and it becomes self-defeating. You self-sabotage. You're not living your life in some sort of faith, and you have too much information, right? Like the doing the meditation should not be concentrating too much on the fear. Like, you're not, like, it's always the positive. Like, you want to concentrate on courage, or you want to concentrate on peace, being free from these things. Like, not, the Sahaj Marg system is very important. They're not to be focused on grossness, right? Like, you don't think about the grossness, you think about the divinity. You're looking for the divine light inside yourself when you meditate in the Sahaj Marg system. And so this happened, Babaji said, I created this contagion of grossness by talking about it. Because people would come, Master Charji said, like, people come up to me and be like, clean me, right? This, getting these sittings and these cleanings. And that's, the opposite of what's supposed to happen. You're focusing on your goal, and you're focusing on God. You're not worried about the grossness. The grossness is being cleaned out. You're not looking for grossness. Also, preceptors were looking for grossness. And they were, possibly creating it. And so they had to, there's this whole training about that, like to be, you're looking for the light, and if something is in the way, you clean it, but you don't focus on it. You're not looking, when you're cleaning your bathroom or your kitchen, you're sweeping. You're not focused on every particle of dirt. You're just trying to get whatever's there, and you sweep it up, and then it's gone. You're removing something, right? And you're throwing it away. You're not concentrating on it. And, what does this piece of dirt think? Like, I wonder what this, I wonder what the lifespan of this, thing is, whatever this dust, you're just getting rid of something, right? You want the floor to sparkle, and you want to have a clean floor, and you're removing anything that's not the part of that. So that's, the attitude that has to be there. It's always in the positive. And so, as along with whatever this cleaning is going on, the mental tendencies of the person has to change. Like, people can't be focused on fear and whatever's going on. Like, people have to live your life. Death is there waiting for all of us. If we start focusing on it, we can't live our life, right? We're worried about death our whole life, then we're not going to live a life. And so this is, sort of the need of the day, right? And this is the positivity that needs to be there. You have a goal, and you're working on the goal, and if there's an obstacle, you problem solve, and you remove the obstacle, and you keep on going on on your path, right? Your journey. Like there's, if every one of us stopped, when we got a flat tire, or there was some kind of, we had to change fucking flights because whatever, if everyone just gave up on the journey, then no one would do anything. Like no one would accomplish anything. There's always going to be obstacles. There's always going to be impediments. And so the idea is, if these impediments are there, then let's find a way to get rid of them, remove them, and then move forward. And so this is what these playlists are for, and these things that are targeted on a specific area for people who are struggling with fear and anxiety. Then this is to help them deal with that, right, as these things come up. But the idea is that you're always focusing on the positive and the goal. Okay, I think that's what I needed to say there, and I'll comment more tomorrow on the next sitting, and when I take this sitting tonight. Okay, so today is Wednesday, February 25th. I don't know if I'm going to put this where I'm going to put this in terms of I might put this in the end of my normal video, but this certainly is, this audio is intended for the feedback list of the anxiety and fear sittings that we're doing. And so I received the sitting, the fourth sitting yesterday, and I gave the fifth sitting this morning. And there's going to be 2 more sittings. I'm going to go to the 7 sittings. Just seems like it's the right thing to do. And there's more cleaning of the mental tendencies in the 5th sitting. Very pleasant. I had a really pleasant, very good. The 4th sitting, I went to the doctor, and I'm going to talk about that more. A lot of great things happened there. There was a lot of frustration, but I got the pills I need. Some of them are homeopathic remedies, some of them are herbal stuff, supplements. But they, he has a program to get rid of the spike protein, and also to deal with Wi-Fi and electromagnetic things that'll help my nervous system. And I just felt, I started this because I had the heart thing that I thought maybe it might have included a panic attack, where my heart went up to 250 beats. And, not that I'm grateful for that thing, because it was horrible to go through, and, but it brought up a lot of things that helped lead me to do this playlist. And it's coming at a good time, because there's, the State of the Union address was last night, and Trump is clearly, like I'm going to say in my video in a little bit, I don't know how anybody could look at Trump and what he is right now and what he's been his whole life and not think that this thing's not going to end in disaster. Or to think that it's not going to end in disaster. I did a double negative there. I mean, I don't know how anybody could think that his presidency won't end in disaster, because it is. And I'm going to say those very words in my other video. If you're hearing this twice, this is just unintentional. But I exercised last night, and I overdid it. And there was, I still have some, hard stuff that's going on. And it took me a while before I kind of caught my breath. And I was, my gut's been, I still have the swelling. Like, there's a lot of things that have to be dealt with the COVID stuff. But I felt really good. And I had this acupuncture session where I had like a spiritual experience, and I'm going to talk about this all in my other channel today as well. But the acupuncture thing went well, and I left. It's kind of stressed out going in there, but I got all the things that I needed, and I felt like this thing has kind of resolved itself a little bit. I feel like the thing is done with the whole the nervous system things, and then I'll be working on the heart stuff later. And I'm taking some stuff for that now. And of course, exercising, and I'm going to make a real commitment to lose weight as best as I can. I've never really had to, I've never been able to do it. Like I've had various brief periods and things like this. But then after I over-exercised, I did the sitting, and it just calmed everything down. And that was great. Like, it was just a really good sitting in terms of I feel like the deeper cleaning is, there's going to be some deep cleaning at the end of it, but the majority of this stuff is dissipated. And, you know, it's something where, like, I'll say this at the last sitting, where people can come back to this playlist if, you know, there is some fears and things that come up later on. Like, if, you know, it'll hopefully clean everything up to this point. But sometimes things emerge later on. If I don't, I'm going to say a little bit here. I might repeat this in this video. But, you know, there's things that are not ready to come out yet, some scaric wise, and so you can't clean them because they're not released yet. They're like they're time relapse kind of thing. What is it? Time release, whatever it is. You know, they're not ready. Like, you know, you have these medications that slowly, you know, you take it, and it goes into your system over time. It doesn't all go into your system right away, and so they have ways of inhibiting its release, and that's what happens with people with scars. And so, but up until this point, I think people will hopefully be feeling, if they're doing this playlist, I don't know how many people are doing it, and, you know, if there's a big event coming up, which I kind of think there is, you know, because of the Whispers of the Brighter World prophecy, and people will be better prepared for that, and you'll see people who do this playlist and how calm they are afterwards. But really, just great sitting. And the one this morning is, you know, a follow up to that sitting yesterday. And I think, you know, the cleaning is going on, you know, with the earlier sittings. That's all continuing for people. I mean, it's just how this thing works. And I believe this is going to come to a great finish with the last couple of sittings. And this will be, you know, something that I'll revisit myself if I feel the need. I mean, I didn't feel the need before I had the heart thing, so, like, and I don't know how much it was, you know, it was just a physical, you know, some scaric thing that I was going through, as opposed to, you know, deeper levels of panic. But I did have some deep fear cleaning in those. Especially that first sitting was rough, and those first couple of days were rough. So, but, you know, there's always, with the Sahaj Marg system, the payoff is at the end. You know, you get through the tough part, which is at the beginning, and then the end and the middle are, you know, the end is usually bliss, right? So, that's the beauty of the Sahaj Marg method, that it's like you get the hangover beforehand, and you get the bliss afterwards, and the bliss can last for a very long time. You know, the whatever it is, the desirable condition can last you know, go on for a long period of time. Whereas, you know, like when people are doing alcohol and drugs, you get the pleasure experience. People do something in the material world, you have the anticipation, the excitement, and then you have the you know, the whatever pleasure that you have waiting for you, whatever it is, and then you pay the price for it, right? Like if it's food, you know, you have these, you know, whatever, you get the health things. If it's drugs, that alcohol. If it's sex, it's kids. You know, it's like, you know, you pay the price afterwards. You have the pleasure first, and then you have the consequences of the pleasure. And this is, you know, the Sahaj Marg system isn't about pleasure; it's about spirituality. But the spirituality is peaceful, and it's, you know, it's serene, and it's, you know, love, and it's, you know, it's good things that are good to experience, and sometimes it's bliss. You know, but it's not necessarily, you know, any of those things. It's going to be all of them. Certainly, always love. But the outcome is always something good, like something that you want, like something that feels good. You know, whether you're, you know, I mean, not necessarily in a physical way, but also physical, right? But certainly in a spiritual way, and a feeling of, you know, a sense of well-being, and that condition can go on for months and years, and in some cases forever. Okay, so that's the update for now, and I will talk. I might include an audio about my what happened last night for me. We'll see when I do that. I haven't done that yet. But anyways, so yeah, so that's we're on day 5, day 6 tomorrow, and then there'll be day 7, and then I'll wrap this thing up. This video will be up by probably Saturday, and that'll complete this whole thing here, this playlist. Okay, this is a voiceover for the, you know, the afterthoughts of the fear and anxiety playlist. So I thought the sitting yesterday was so great, the 5th sitting. I had a very blissful experience, and I almost felt like, well, maybe it should have ended with that sitting. You know, I had the stuff with the health breakthrough and the kind of spiritual experience I had with the when I was doing the acupuncture, and just came with a very positive attitude. And I feel like my body's still glitching out a little bit, but my heart isn't racing, which is the main thing. And but I thought about this sixth sitting that I just gave today as like a really deep cleaning, like the last sitting I got from Master Chargy, when I was made a preceptor. Like I had, I think, 8 sittings in total, and the 8th sitting I had 3 with him, and then some with full preceptors, and they were very intense cleanings. Like I could feel they were intense cleaning, but not, not. I mean, I maybe more intense than anything I experienced. But the one I went to his house, and it was the morning, like you just it was probably like 7:38 in the morning, like first thing, and he used like a will force that was so strong that all these thoughts were just flying out. I was talking to my wife about this because there's this other guy who was made a preceptor that I used to talk to, pretty frequently. We had sort of a falling out, but and of course now whatever's gone on, I don't know what he's doing. But he was about my age, and he was one of the few people that was, kind of like me, coming from the same generation, and he was made a preceptor maybe a couple years after I was, and his last sitting was very similar, where we couldn't believe the force in which the cleaning that was happening. And it penetrated like to the deepest levels, like just, and it was like these thoughts and this feelings and things were just rushing past it. It was like it was like like a gale force hurricane wind was blowing all the stuff out of the back, through the front. Like that's what it felt like. So, and I was hoping that would be the 6th sitting that was done today. And I felt confident that that's what it's going to be, cleaning whatever less is left to clean. And then the 7th sitting tomorrow will be a transmission to replace the fear with, courage, and with, natural, whatever it is, things that are there to, there's something was removed and then something else that takes its place. So today's Thursday, February 26, 2026. So I just did the 6th sitting, and my wife and I went for a walk, and I felt very intense, similar to the 6th sitting and the playlist where there's 7 sittings in 7 days. That's an overall cleaning. But I felt really good about this sitting. And the 5th sitting, when I took the sitting last night, I'm like, oh, this is an amazing sitting. I felt that way when I was giving it in the morning as a preceptor, and then receiving it as an abhyasi at night. And very happy with this playlist. And, it's coming at a very tumultuous time. Trump just gave a State of the Union, and we're at odds with, like it seems like there's going to be some kind of false flag thing maybe, or something to deal with the Iran thing. Just to start World War III with Iran, and that could be like a big event, or there could be a solar flare. There's going to be some, like, it just feels like there's some, like, it's just something there. And so I think I'll feel better overall when that's, whatever it is over with. Like some big event that's going to come because of the prophecies and the whispers of the brighter world. And, people watching this in a year or 3 months, you'll probably already know what that is. There's a prophecy that's supposed to happen this Saturday. Today's February 26th, and it's supposed to happen well, at least if it's to the day, which I think it might be, but I don't know. So there's all that. But I, very happy with everything that's gone on with this gathering, the sittings, and not the gathering, but the playlist. And it's I think in maybe a month or so I'll do one on anger and then one on hatred, and I don't know if there's any other specific things. Just because of the need of the day, and then people can, access any of these different playlists. I mean, even if I'm dead, there'll be, as long as there's the internet, there'll be this, system there that people can use, and it can be something, right? And it's going to cover all the basics. Again, if you're somebody who's listening to this and you haven't done the introductory sittings and you're doing these other sittings, you really have to go back and do that. That's how you start. Watch all the videos and playlists here. I'm going to keep on saying that over and over again. And they should be watched over and over again, like probably once a year, just the playlist and the explanation of the system. If you're doing the meditation, and read the books. You can find the books online, the free ones that are online, the major ones, all of Babaji's books, which are a little bit harder to understand. But, as you do the meditation, you'll understand them more and more. My Master by Chargy, which is a great book. And then there's lots of books available on Amazon and eBay and places like that. And so, all of that stuff. All right, so let me wrap this one up here, and I will, you know, I'll give the sittings tomorrow, and then I'll have, I guess, maybe a reflection on Saturday, and this video will go up then. Saturday morning, I'll do one last voiceover here, and then, two voiceovers to go, and then this thing will be done. And this playlist will be complete, and I feel, it'll be, successful. All right, so that's it for now. Okay, it's Friday, February 27th, 2026. It's 10:43 in the morning. I just completed the seventh and final sitting as a preceptor giving the sitting. And I will do one more voiceover tomorrow to conclude this afterthoughts part of the gathering. And I'm going to say something here, then I'm going to take my dogs for a walk, and then I'll complete this video. So there'll be one more voiceover after this one, and that should do it here. So I had some thoughts during the sitting, a very, sublime sitting, a very subtle, deep cleaning to pull out whatever is buried there. The thing about fears, and I was doing a voiceover this morning that it's going to go in the Death and Dying playlist, probably going to go up on Sunday. Sittings to prepare for death. I have a playlist for that. And I have to do more sittings for that. There's talks and sittings in that one. There's also a playlist on my Pockets of Future channel for videos about to listen to after, I die, whatever that would be. And I was talking about in this video how, the fear of God and how, fear repels, like you avoid what you fear, right? The object of your anger and the object of your hatred are there, right? The object of your anger and hatred are, you focus on those things. You are pulled to those things. You'll often go to somebody that you're angry with and confront them, or, you'll set up interactions, hostile interactions. Anger draws you towards something, but fear repels you, like flight or fight, right? If you're fighting, you're getting more intimate, you're getting more physical, right? Whatever the fight response is, you're choosing to engage with that person in a, sort of an intimate way, either a physical fight or argument. Whereas fear, you run away, right? You want to avoid, you want to distance yourselves. And, for that reason, things that you fear, you push away when you bury the fears inside of you. You're going to push them as far away as possible and seal them up, right? Your dark thoughts, the things that you most are ashamed of, embarrassed, those things that you don't want to identify with, and fears are things that you push to the, wherever you're farthest part away from your consciousness, where you can't find them, and you don't, in some past life you bury these things. And so those things are the deepest and farthest away from, where your consciousness is, and where things that you've sealed off with whatever mechanism you seal those off, and they have to be pulled out from the recesses of your subconscious, from your samskaric patterns, spiritual essence. And so, that idea came to me in terms of a very subtle way of coaxing these things out and pulling them out on a deep level. Things that you've hidden in such a way that they can never be found, right? And so the other part to it was, there's a cleaning part, and there's a very subtle transmission. And when something's cleaned out, you have to replace it with something. And there was, the idea of courage and faith and, belief that this is part of a plan, and miseries is divine blessings, and these types of things, right? Where you're, the overall kind of idea is that when you go through something traumatic, something undesirable, you might have a fear response, but you have to retrain yourself not to indulge in the fears. Because you can do that. You can worry, and you can, people just wallow in their fears. They wallow in their anger and hatred, these things. You don't use your divine thought force, a thought force that comes from the divine and similar to the divine thought that created the universe, to, embellish and endorse and strengthen these fears, right? You're hitting the pause button, and then, remembering and using the system of Sahaj Marg's system of cleaning and meditation, and you can do like this playlist again, whatever it is, using the tools at your disposal to not let the fears take root, not to let these fears to, like having some sense that everything's okay. This is the way it's supposed to be, right? This is part of God's plan. This is a gift for my benefit. This is a misery as divine blessing. This is the wrongs done by others that are there to help me become a better person, right? So, undesirable things and things that cause a fear response. Like, all right, so there's the fear response, but then that's it. You let it pass through you. You disconnect, you disassociate. You're like, I can feel that going on. I mean, it's one of the things that's been a blessing for me about the Sahaj Marg system is that as you practice it, there becomes a natural detachment from real life, like from not real life, from the illusionary materialistic life, and your emotional responses. Like I can be angry, and nobody would know it. Like I could feel anger in myself. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, and I'm angry for no reason. Like I just have anger there, and I mean, it's maybe I'm having a biological, physical something's going on spiritually. But I wake up in 2 a.m. And, my wife could wake up and I give her a hug and I can project, allow love to flow through me. She could feel love, my love for her and my, love that, I give her a hug and love can come through me. While I'm, she'd never know I was angry, right? That I'm not angry, like I'm not angry at something. Like, I can think about things that make me angry, like Dodgy or, Trump, or, things that could make me angry if I want to attach the anger to something, but I'm just going through anger. It's just, there's things in your system and they come up and you can be detached from them. Like you can, it's there, it's not like you're denying it's there. It's not, you're not in denial, but it's, something that can pass through you. You don't have to wallow in the anger. You don't have to think about it and get all mad and think about all the things you're mad at. And I can do that, and even if I do that, I can still be detached from it. That's why I'm able to cover all these things in these videos, on my regular channel, all the political events, things that, just are disgusting and horrible and, just bad and evil and, all the things. And they're all provoking negative emotions, fear and anger and these things, and I just don't feel them, right? And so, people have to learn to develop these abilities that not to let these things take root. Not to bury these fears, not to, let them dominate one's existence. Believe in full faith, have faith. Faith is the most important part of this scenario is that, faith is the, antidote to anger, that everything is here and it's God's will. I have faith in God. I have faith in my ability to do what I'm supposed to do. And despite, the fear reaction, despite the obstacles in my path, right, I can overcome these things because of my faith and my belief, and so I can stick with it and see it through and not allow these things to interfere with my inevitable goal. And so, the people have to develop these tools and using the cleaning method, the meditation, when you do have a fear response or an anger response or hatred responses, I'll make these other playlists eventually too, the anger and the fear, the hatred, which will come if there's like a World War III type situation that would be helpful, right? When there's, all these things start to really implode here as things fall apart and the system collapses. So anyways, those are the things that I thought I'm going to go for with a walk for my dogs. And then I'm going to probably put this in two other video in the in the playlist about on my Pockets of the Future channel, the playlist that's about what to do, videos for after I die. It's on my, normal channel, and then the one that it's about death and dying on the Gratefullness meditation channel, of course, the Journey series. Anyways, let me take the walk with my dogs, and I'll come back and wrap this one up. Okay, beautiful day out there. It's probably 50, really sunny, mild wind. Yesterday, a couple days ago, was sunny and windy. I put our comforter, our dog buddy had peed on a corner of it that was near the ground, which was, displeasing, and I put the comforter on our line, and it's amazing. We have a comforter that's supposed to be dry cleaned. It's a down, but I wash it and then I put it out on the line. It smells amazing from drying outside with the sun and the wind, but the wind was so bad it kept on blowing off. It just constantly blew off like 3 times, and then I put it in the dryer for the remainder. But It was mostly dry by then. Anyways, beautiful day out there. So I did the 6th sitting last night. I think before dinner. Yeah, and then I woke up around 2 and I sort of had maybe like almost like a mild panic attack. There was some anxiety. It felt like maybe my heart would start racing, but I went out and took my pulse. We got this little oxygen pulse thing that you put on your finger. And my pulse was like in the 70s, even though my heart seemed to be beating fairly strongly. But and I realized that I've been feeling a lot of fear this week with this playlist that I haven't felt fear in a long time, like some kind of panic. I mean, nothing, maybe some natural things here or there, but nothing I can remember. But this whole thing with the heart and then the meditations of the playlist kind of brought that stuff up. I felt it was good that it was coming out in the middle of the night, that it was being cleaned off. The whole thing it's not just the sittings, it's the 7-day, whole thing. I'll talk about that probably in the last audio. So I have to take this 7th sitting, I have to receive it. I, gave it this morning and I'll receive it sometime this afternoon. And then I'll comment about all this tomorrow, Saturday. And then this video will be done with the afterthoughts of the 7-day gathering. Very interesting time, and I've been thinking about death and dying quite a bit. And I'm very conscious of it, which I usually am not. Like, I don't think about things because, things become, if you dwell on things that you don't want, they become worries and, all kinds of ways that things can become negative, right? And they don't, help you. It's a distraction. It's something that, poisons your ability to go out and live life, right? If you think about death all the time, that you're going to die, then you're not going to live your life, right? You're going to, even if you're not worried about death, it seems pointless. Like, why am I doing this if I'm just going to die, right? That's what people, who focus on these things. And when you have issues, whatever they are, like I said before, it's best to find a way to detach yourself from them and carry on with your, original purpose. It's very easy to get distracted by all kinds of different things, and not to do that here. But I was thinking about how there are going to be some bad days, as we end with the ending part of my life. There's going to be some days that they don't have to be viewed as bad, but they're going to be hard. They're going to be difficult days. Like, so the number one is, my wife and I, one of us is going to die first. It'd be great if we died together. And the other person has to suffer through that, right? The shock of that and what that means to them. The loss. I mean, it's going to be a bad day for one of us, and there'll be bad days. Again, not necessarily bad days, but very hard days where that becomes evident. Like, we both have health issues as we get older, and it'll just become more and more apparent. Of course, as you get older, it's easier as your life has been lived, and I can see the difference now at age 62, 61, I guess, to where I was, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and as a kid. My perception about it is I'm much more relaxed about it because, you've lived your life and, you're accepting of this, you're gradually accepting, your inevitable end. But, so there's going to be things like our dogs dying, just things, health issues and a loss of things. And, that's what happens when you get older. And there's these, these things that you have to deal with. Sometime between when you have these moments throughout your life where you have this brush with death, or you think about death because a loved one died or something happens. But then you have your own issues, like you get something, get sick, and every time you get sick, you realize your mortality. You're aware of your mortality, and it becomes something, and then how do you deal with that? Because it's inevitable, so it's not something really to dread or fear, but it's something that we're programmed to survive. We're programmed to want to go on forever in a sense. And, it's counterintuitive to the reality of our situation. So, but that's how we're wired. We're wired to survive, and, we have a fight to live and a fight to survive. And sometimes we have to, muster up a fight and fight back from, the depression and doldrums and, defeats that we have in our life and obstacles and the overwhelm that inevitably comes in. So, those things are all there, and it's something for somebody as they get older, you realize it. Your mortality is like more in your face, and you're aware of this, and, And as a spiritual person, you want to die in the right way. You want to die in a positive way that helps facilitate your next endeavor. I just was answering this comment at the beginning of the video about, what you do about other people's deaths to help them, find their way to wherever they need to go. And now, I guess it was in my last video, the end of my last video that I put up today, the video about Candace Owens is, the title of it is, Why Candace is as bad as Erica and Gavin Newsom sells himself as a dumb fuck just like you and me. So, there's all that. So like that video's just ready to go now. I'm just looking at it now. It's going to go up tonight. All right. So, anyways, the sittings have all gone well, and I'm going to do one follow-up voiceover tomorrow. I'm going to put this voiceover probably in my, my video I put out for, I guess it's going to go up on Sunday. I'm going to take Saturday off. And so the video I'm going to put up Sunday on my regular channel, this will be an audio that I hopefully remember to put in at the end of the video, but we'll see. Like I just might forget. Anyways, that's it for this audio, and I will put the next one in tomorrow I'll put the next one in and wrap this video up. Okay, so I did the final sitting. I took the final sitting, I meditated and received the final meditation. I think I talked about giving it, and I'm not sure if I did in the last audio. Today's Saturday, February 28th. Big things have happened. So first of all, the sitting was amazing to give. When you give these sittings, there's some books and training for, how to give a basic sitting. And there was a training done by Master Chargy. And then there was, various books and things and comments and, talking about it and talking to people about it, talking to preceptors. But something like this gathering where it's targeting a specific type of condition, whatever you want to call fear. You don't want to look for fear, right? So it's something that you're cleaning without like searching for a specific thing. Like the ideas that, whatever's there, whatever fear is there, whatever panic, whatever, is blocking somebody's spiritual evolution, whatever's blocking their connection to divinity is being removed. And so there are a couple of ways that was done. And the other piece was, what do you put in its place? There's these suggestions are supposed to be given, spiritual suggestions to replace, of course, transmission replaces anything that's cleaned out. Like the transmission, God's divine energy replaces the space that was occupied by the grossness. Like something is removed and something's got to take its place. And so it's always transmission, but also suggestions are given, helpful suggestions. You read the abhyasa, you read the situation, things that you think might help the other, the person, character qualities or, whatever it might be. And of course, when fear is removed, you want faith is the number one thing, right? You want, courage and faith and all these things are, it's a belief that everything's okay. A belief that there's a plan and no matter what's happening, it's part of that plan. Because fear comes in when you think something's wrong. You think something's happening when it shouldn't be. You think that there's something that's completely, something you don't have the strength to endure, something that overwhelms you, something that is, that's going to make you sort of crumble. And then you develop a fear of this thing happening, right? Something that's beyond your ability to endure, right? So like when my kids were young, the thought of one of them dying was like, that was it. Like that was the thing that I just couldn't, I was like, I can't handle that. Please don't give me that, right? Whatever. It's things that people have to endure. And that was something I just wasn't willing to let happen. And I put a lot of energy into, the consciousness so that wouldn't happen, right? You can do things to sort of block something from happening or, by keeping your thought forced on it. But of course, later on, when there was chaos and I was run down and overwhelmed and, my daughter committed suicide and, it was, I don't want to say it was more bearable, but the circumstances that had happened over the years, my daughter's my not being able to see a future for her because she just didn't seem like she could hold a job or complete anything. I didn't see her being able to raise kids. I mean, without some changes. We all go through rough periods where we make bad decisions. I had my real punky era, really just a total piece of shit, where I was like just no redeeming qualities and really no future and just whatever. Angry and, like incompetent, overwhelmed. And, but I was able to adapt and change and rise up to it. And the Sahaj Marg system helped. And for my daughter, Anna, it was, she did the meditation for about a month. At least she went to group meditation. She really didn't do like personal practice. And she was young too. She was 16 years old. So it wasn't like, she was getting to start young. I mean, the Kamlish had relaxed the rules from 18 down to 15, the minimum age. And she, she did it for a little bit, but it didn't stick. And so that was that. But in all that, it became more and more obvious that she, she needed to change drastically to be able to have a normal life, to have a happy, healthy, and productive life. And she just wasn't able to do that. So, but as a younger kid, when she was younger, it would have been really hard for me to take. And, I mean, my family had fallen apart by that time, and I was so, I'd went through the ringer that I was able to endure that. But when the kids were young, that was like something that I just couldn't imagine. And so it's these kind of things that we are scared of, things that could happen, things out of our control, things that, are beyond our capacity to bear the pain. And you develop fears and phobias and things of those things, and things from past lives or whatever. Maybe you drown in a past life, or you fell off a cliff, and you come in, you've developed a fear of falling or something, of heights and whatever it may be. So in all that, there has to be the cleaning of the fear and then replacing it with something. And the fourth sitting, part of this thing is praying that the ideas come to you, like how to do a playlist. It's a new thing. And, part of it is being able to have ideas come to you. And the other part is allowing divinity to do the work that you can't do, like allow God to come through and the divine master and complete the work and do the work, which is how the sittings work in general, that you're inviting God in to do the work that, is beyond your ability to see or read or whatever it is. Like the work is perfect when God is involved and divinity is orchestrating the work. So the fourth sitting really came together. I was very pleased with it. I was very blissful. It was deep cleaning, very subtle, going to a deep place. And then there was, good transmission, and I thought good, suggestions and things that were there to replace what was removed. And then Friday night, I was going to take the sitting before the 9 p.m. We have the universal sitting every Friday night at 9 p.m. that's given by the Divine Master. And I was going to take that sitting at 9 p.m. and I wanted to do the other sitting before that. You usually need, I think, a 4 to 6 hour gap between the sittings. You can't do them. You have to let the sitting set. But I wasn't able to do that. I ran out of time, and so I wasn't able to do the sitting till I went to sleep. And right before I went to sleep, I've been getting these the rapid heartbeat, and this maybe, I don't know if they would be called panic attacks, and it's also like a rush of adrenaline, where I'm wide awake and I'm just really awake, and I get energized, and oftentimes it's happening late at night. And I, my heart wasn't racing, but I had the condition that was, that had started when I had that rapid heartbeat. And so that happened, and I started to have a little bit of panic, and I knew this prophecy was going to come due. And so I started checking the news, because I figured, that Trump might have started to bomb Iran, or maybe there was a solar flare that hit on the other side of the world where it was daylight, any of these things, right? These places where it's already morning, and it's, and I went to bed with a little bit of, I don't want to say, I was just unsettled. And then I took the last sitting. I figured after the last sitting I'd feel better. And I was, I took the sitting. It was really, peaceful and blissful. And I fell immediately to sleep. And I woke up I think it was still dark out. I think my wife woke up early, and I woke up when she got up. It was like 6 a.m. and I woke up and I had like kind of a little bit of a panic attack. And I just, the breathing and the heart was okay, but I was just like kind of flipped out. And then I got nauseous and I threw up. And I, but there's not, dry heaved, which is also this thing is like a migraine. I'm going these physical things that I'm having now. I'm not having the migraines. I'm having this instead, these glitch outs. And after that happened, I meditated and I felt really good. And I got tired. And I fell back to sleep. And I woke up and I fell back to sleep again. And I was really sleepy and relaxed. And I woke up and I saw that Trump had started the war with Iran, which, I was anticipating this whole thing. Because of the whispers of the brighter world message, I had to walk away from the voiceover for a little bit. And I ended up having a little bit of a physical episode. But let me get back to this and I'll talk about that in a second. So, this thing that this Whispers of the Brighter Word prophecy, 25 years, quarter century, that was given in 2001 on this date, February 28th. And so, I didn't, in the beginning, think it was going to be to the date. And like I talked about this, and I got a voiceover I did today, which I'm going to put in after this one. And then I'm going to do another voiceover probably tomorrow to wrap this one up. And so, this thing happened. And I had, I want to say I was relieved to hear they were bombing Iran because, I have a thing with Libya and Iran. There was people who did the meditation from Iran, and they were all great. And some of them specifically I was kind of close to, and wonderful people. And it's not just them and their families, but it's, how much the U.S. has fucked over their country over the years and the whole thing. I talk about that a lot in my other channel. It'd be good for people who are interested who end up doing this playlist to, if they do this playlist in a year or so. The video is called "The Doomsday Prophecy Has Begun as Nutless Puppet Trump, WWE's WW3, World War III, WWE's World War III as Beatty pulls the strings." And that really, that was what I just came up with on the fly today. But there's, this thing about all of it. And I read a couple of the Whispers messages. You'll hear that in the voiceover in a moment. So I guess felt a little relieved that it wasn't something that was immediately devastating, like a solar flare or a nuclear bomb going off. That it was something, and I haven't checked the news, but things were escalating today. And also the stars are aligned. There's some kind of energetic thing. And one of my viewers left a comment saying that this was a big day. My wife just said the same thing. This whole, the planets aligning astrologically and the whole thing, which of course these days always end up being like that. But I was relieved that we have more time to, it was confirmation for me, and yet, which I don't really need, but it's just there, motivational. That we're going to have to go through some changes, and for me, it's getting the farm ready, and talking more about these things, the need for spirituality here, and the diving more deeper into the meditative practice. I mean, just all these things, right? Because things get more intense, and then there's like you have to up your game and all that stuff. So my wife and I had a really good day. We went out to eat, and we had talked about like preparing for what if there's a solar flare today or whatever, because they talk about that in the Whispers messages, the poles reversing themselves and all that. And so we ended up having a problem with something, and the problem, like there was various ways to solve the problem, like a problem that was brought to light by the tumultuous time. And we went and asked some guys some questions about it, and we went shopping for some trees. We had to put up a tree between our path and the newly created path and the bees, as the bees are starting to come out. So that the bees that, we want to put some kind of a shrub bush kind of thing there that would block the bees from, when we were walking behind the path, there would be a barrier, right? And we already have stuff. Once the summer starts growing, there'll be a bunch of foliage there, but we wanted to put something there, and we found something. And we had 4 or 5 ways to solve the problem. And what we didn't realize is we had something that would solve the problem, but we had lost it. We later figured out we lost it. And we looked for it everywhere, and we had pretty much given up on it. Then we had, 3 or 4 different ways to still solve the problem, but they were all going to be difficult and maybe, cost money and, all these things. None of them really were palatable. And then we found the thing that we lost, and it solved the problem. So it was like a wonderful thing, but we just felt like it was kind of a good day other than, it's, World War III starting, but sometimes days feel good, and this one felt pretty good. I did have at the end of the day a little bit of an episode, which I've got all these different meds now and different, not supplements, not meds, but, naturopathic kind of things. And, I'm able to avoid the kind of things that I already had, so that was good. And then I decided that I would do the sitting again, the 7th sitting, which I just did. And it, my heart rate's great now. It went up a little bit, before, and not for a long period of time, but it was kind of, I was feeling a little unsettled, maybe a little anxiety. But I just redid the 7th sitting because I was, I did it late last night and I dozed off, and I don't know, I just felt like I would redo it. And I just phenomenal. I feel just wonderful. I think this was a big day in a lot of different ways because of the, changes are like there's everything's going to be different. Like, the condition. And this happens with the meditations too, that everything changes after you go to a gathering and these types of things. You just, you come out a different person, and the world is different, and it's vibrating. Your trajectory has changed, and, all of a sudden your life is taking a turn. When you get married or you get a job or you move or, you have children. I mean, it necessarily it doesn't have to be something like that, but there's just times in your life where things change and you're like, oh, this is never going to be the same. And, now with the World War III, that's, which is, starting to have all the stuff that's happening. That's one thing, but the conditions change. Like there's pivotal days, and sometimes there doesn't have to be some milestone or big material event. It just has to be something changes and you notice it. There's a shift. Sometimes you see people differently. Maybe you've had a friend, someone like the opposite sex, someone you grew up with, and they were always your kind of friend or whatever. And then one day you realize that, there's chemistry there and love, and, they're your spouse, and they're there the whole time. You never noticed them. And then all of a sudden there's a change in perspective, right? Or, somebody, does something bad to you, or you find out something about them, or just something emerges, and your whole life changes, and because of this, your different point of view of your parent, your dad. You find out your dad was an alcoholic and he's been cheating on your mom, or something like this, right? There's these shifts, where there's like a new paradigm in your life, and these things happen. And for me, it's been this has been this period of time. With my heart racing, my heart getting up to 250 beats, those 2 days, and then, all the things, and just doing the playlist here and all the meditation, all the other stuff. And then, the stuff waiting for the prophecy to happen, and, waiting for this I first read this in 2005. So for 20 years, I knew something was going to come, and I didn't know what the severity was. Again, I'll read the prophecy here because it's a part of this playlist. And I feel really good about this playlist. And, I think over time, these wars always end badly. And, this one, I mean, they might start off good, but, the first 2 Iraq wars that we had, the first one was, kind of ended in a good way, Operation Desert Storm. But the second one, Bush was like mission accomplished. I'm going to talk about this in another voiceover. So these are all going on the Journey series. So this will be repetitive, but I mean, I talk about this with my, regular viewers. I guess I can put this, well, I don't know. I'll probably just do a new voiceover. Maybe I'll put this at the end of a video. But, the war went south after that. I'll talk about that more specifically tomorrow. The war went south after that. And so, at first it looked like mission accomplished, right? George Bush came in, and then things went south. And, a lot of these wars, a lot of these things, there's repercussions. The stuff that happened with Libya really bothered me. the way they took down Gaddafi, these things. And this thing with Iran, it's not going to go smoothly. It was not done for a legitimate reason. Iran was no real threat. America's screwed over Iran now a number of times. Regime change with Mossadegh in, I believe, the 1960s or 50s. Democratic elected moderate politician. And they took him out and then destroyed the country with the Shah of Iran. And now the country is the way it is because of America. And then all the ways America's been shitty to Iran since, just the tensions and the stuff that America's done, bullying them. Of course, Israel being a part of that, puppeting America, all that stuff. And so with all these things, it's going to end badly. There's no way this thing is going to end well. And, it's part of the Whispers prophecies. It's going to be, this event is going to kick off a series of other events that are going to, destroy the world to whatever extent, right? Nuclear bombs. I mean, it's going to lead to nuclear war, and the magnetic field shifting, and a bunch of shit's going to happen, right? Like the whole, planet's going to be destabilized. And you can feel that kind of coming. But anyways, I really feel good about these playlists. So what I want to say is, so when that starts happening, people are going to get mad, and there's going to be hatred. There's already division and hatred, and Trump is, whatever he causes. And I mean, just all the anger towards the so-called elite, and now, Israel, and there's all this stuff that's happening. And, these next playlists, and, these playlists take a little, take some out of me. I'm glad to do them. I like doing them. I mean, there's no, issue, but I mean, they're intense. And, you just can't do one after the other, but in a short period of time, there's going to be the need for one with anger and one with hatred, and, these things. And so, there's going to be need for deeper cleaning and more intense, more commitment to people's practices, people's individual practices. Anyways, I'm getting a little tired here. It's already 11 o'clock. I didn't get a chance to finish this when I needed to, but like I said, I'm going to do one more voiceover to sort of sum everything up. I'm going to put that voiceover that I did today about the Whispers of the Brighter World in here. And there'll be one more, and then I'll put this video up on Sunday. And yeah, that'll be great. Anyways, that's it for now. Okay, so I'm just going to read the Whispers of the Brighter World message because it's to the day. And, it was something I've been aware of now for over 20 years. So in 2004, Master Chargy, the third master of the Sahaj Marg system, said there's going to be a special book, and it's going to be $250, and you guys have to pre-order it if you want it. And he didn't say anything about it. And it seemed extraordinary because most of the literature, all the literature, up until that point, was printed almost at cost. Like hardcover books for $10, the mission would get $1 or $2. So because they would sell 5,000 copies. So, they make $10,000, right? Most of the money came from rich people, Indians who came to America and donated money. Chargy himself had donated lots of his own money when he was a practitioner of the system, right? Like before he was the master. People donated money. And so the books were something that they wanted people to read, and, to get them to read them, they made them as cheap as possible. And so it seemed like an odd thing. And the book came out. It was beautiful, leather bound. It has these amazing pictures. I'll show it maybe in the near future. Like the pictures, I'll just go through with my camera and show you the various. Beautiful book. Came in like a case thing. And there was this French woman. And she did the meditation. She came from a rich family. And when she was a kid, she was on a horse, and she fell off the horse, and she got really hurt. And a doctor she would later describe as a butcher fucked up her back, and she was in chronic pain from that time on for her whole life. She could barely move. She was stuck in her apartment. And she had past lives with Swami Vivekananda as a Christian, Saint Sister Davila, something like that. I can't remember the name. Catherine of Davila, something. She was a gifted medium. In the 1990s, Babaji, who had died in 1983, started to contact her. And she thought she was fucking crazy. And he sent another person to her, another medium, who showed up at her house, and she knocked on the door and said, Babaji says, and there's no way this woman would be found, right? Nobody would know. And Babaji said, the woman opens the door and the woman says, Babaji sent me over here to tell you the messages are real, right? That this was, And so she she died in 2018. She channeled from 1994 and mostly in the 2000s when it really kicked in. She was, she didn't have a lot of energy, physical energy, and it took a lot of energy for her to do these, these messages. And she did 20,000 of them. It's the most ever of this type of material. Babaji himself intercommuned all the time, and he talked to all the great masters and saints, Jesus and Buddha and Krishna and, all these things, Muhammad. I mean, and ones who aren't as famous, like ones that we don't know about. But mostly it was Lalaji, his, spiritual master. And he was, probably the most gifted medium, but he had a full-time job as being a spiritual master. But this woman, this is all that she did. And Master Charji was kind of bummed when he first heard about it, because he thought he was going to be able to intercommune, and he did, Babaji said, you're just not a medium and you have so much other work, this is what, we needed this separate person. And so the book was released, and at the end of the book, there was a series of prophecies. And, I was kind of shocked that the majority of people dismissed them. But there was one in particular, which I'm going to read to you. I'm going to read two to you. Let me read that one first. That, it was a timeline, and it was today. Today's the day. I'll show you the message here. I'll do a picture of the message, right? So you see that'll be the, whatever the thing is here. The picture you're looking at is the day and all these things, right? But here it is. So, I gotta pull it up. What am I doing here? All right, here we go. Wednesday, February 28th, 2001, 9 a.m. In a quarter of a century, so that's today. It's to the day, right? And when I first heard this, I thought it was about my brother. He wasn't into these Whispers of the Brighter World books at first. He was the kind of person that, he's very passionate about anything, and he's comes in very strong. He was very strongly against these books, but then he came back a couple of years later, and he was totally into the books, and it's like he was telling me about them, right? And so I want to say that I've had this incredible experience with these books. There's a time that I was going through kind of a crisis, and I was fasting because I had health issues, and all I could do was like sit and read, and I read a bunch of these messages, and I read these messages on a different level. Like I penetrated to a deeper, higher level of spirituality. And I saw things, and I could feel things, and I knew things that, it was just this brief period of time. And then I started to eat again, and the crisis, went away, and it went back to normal. But I was operating on a much higher level. And there was a preceptor who contacted me, this guy named Rob, who a number of people who had heard about Sahaj Marg, Heartfulness for me, went to him. Like he was, he's a guy, ex-military intelligence, something like this. This guy was most of the people that did the meditation were hippies, but Rob was, he had military connections and different kind of guy. And he really was into the Whispers, and he would read Whispers messages with other people for 8 hours. That's all they would do. And he said they had the same thing happen to them. Like they just went to a different plane of existence. It was like amazing. But I've had all these things. There's wonderful things in these books. And the prophecies are a small part of it, right? So I already knew these books were valid. I mean, just because of the energy in the books, and they were they're transformative. In terms of the list, there's many books in the mission that I've read, and they just changed they changed me in ways, like the information there. But these Whispers were, just a like next level thing. And so, I read this, and I'm like, all right, this is in 2005. I'm like, we got 20 years. And my brother said, he kept on telling me 25-25, that the day, that 2025, December of 25, 12-25-25, right? That it's December 25th of 2025 was the day. And I was like, do you have that date? And he goes, no, it's in the book. I'm like, no, it's in February of 26 it would be, right? And he was like, but I was unclear whether he had inside information because he knew more people. But no one really was talking about it. Like I didn't, they were like, because these prophecies and the whispers in the brighter world, things that predicted things, other messages, he would often say to the woman, "This doesn't concern you," to her, because she freaked out. There's one message I'll read about it, right? Like she was, constantly freaking out about the messages in general, and these ones particularly. Like she didn't even want to write these ones down. So it isn't like this was a big. Nobody talked about it. The prophecies were there, and I tried to get people to talk about it, and they didn't want to, right? Like they were. No, it's there was this one kid who was he was a Virginia Tech student, and neat kid, Indian kid, studying science. He was studying the motion of water, he was some sort of engineer. And I was talking to him about this. He goes, no, the people who run the world are so smart, they'll figure out a way to, like that was his thing. But here it is, Wednesday, February 28th, 2001, 9 a.m. In a quarter of a century, the Earth will experience a major turbulence that will be the beginning of a cycle which Earthmen will find very difficult to go through. Fire will literally beat down in certain parts of the world, whereas torrents of the rain will pour over others. Cataclysms will follow one another for many long years, keeping men frightened. Many will turn towards the supreme God, beseeching his forgiveness for more and more aberrant behaviors, as well as for the maltreatment imposed on their nourishing mother, the earth. The failure to respect the elements will lead to the efforts generating terror among the population of the end of the century. In future ages, the present layout of the continents will be shattered. Men's maps will need revising, yet the creatures inhabiting this planet will have more than enough to do to survive rather than dealing with those details. I mean, I can almost read this from memory. Adam will turn against men, ATOM, will turn against mankind, will not be able to harness it, and its lightning power will be devastating. The time for punishment of such a conceit will take place as hard as it can, and man, paying for his ancestors' glaring mistakes, will suffer without having any control over the situation. The transformation of this planet must go through all these cataclysms in order to be effectively completed. Babaji, the second master of the Sahaj Marg system. Okay, so the day is here, and I didn't know if it was going to be to the day, but I had a reaction. Well, let me read this other two messages here. So this one is Friday, December 29th, 2000, 8 a.m. So this was before that. Nuclear power will ruin the world. This badly controlled power is demonic. One day man will be overwhelmed by its power. Upheavals that will change the world will have their origin in it. It has much wider implications than you can imagine, which contribute to destabilizing the balance of this planet. In this matter also, man plays with fire without actually being aware of the detrimental consequences for humanity. If that doesn't describe Trump, then I don't know what does. A natural energy will replace all that is currently used and which are harmful to man. Human knowledge does not allow its use for the time being. The secrets will be revealed to men of goodwill who will look for an inspired scientific research. The energy will be non-polluting and very inexpensive. Those with money power will not be content with it. Only the absolute necessity for the survival of the world will prevail. This time is not going to happen tomorrow. The earth will go through great changes before getting to that. These prophecies do not concern you. You are undergoing the damaging effects of this insidious pollution, which will lead the world to collapsing. But you can neither stop time nor modify the system in place. Then protect yourself as well as possible from the harmful effects and pray for your brothers of the future, Babaji. So, there's a video in all of the description boxes called Whispers of the Brighter World Prophecies or something like that. And I read all of them there, so you can go listen to those. And there's a lot more that aren't in that section in that book. There's all these other ones. And, I'm going to comb through them. I have hundreds of them, and I have to find, the ones that are most pertinent. Like, I can't read all of them, unless I did multiple videos. So, two more things to get to here. I got pulled up the wrong thing. Where is it? Here it is. All right. Later that day, so at 9 in the morning, he gave that one about in a quarter of a century. And later that day, Wednesday, February 28th, 2001, 10:30 a.m., You can call this new collection Prophecies. There's these collections that they put for this book. They were called different things, right? Because they were over a period of time. And then they started to release all the messages in order on the internet. Again, 20,000 of them. Sunday, March 4th, 2001, 10 a.m. My dear daughter, concerning these prophecies, you must write what we dictate without having any qualms. You cannot check the soundness of what we are telling you. Some of our comments confirm assertions you've read from other sources, which themselves include some of ours. The best inspired ones have been written by mediums, having access to well-informed sources. Great upheavals occurred on this planet time and time again. They made life evolve in various forms. Terrifying species inhabited the planet that screenwriters of science fiction movies cannot even imagine. The humanoid kingdom is rather recent. It wasn't about spontaneous generation, but it was experimentally generated by superior beings and has evolved with time. Present researchers whose eyes are riveted on test tubes would be astounded if they discovered the true reality of mankind. There is no question of an upper race as they believe. The sub-race tries to work its way up to the upper level with God's help. That's us. There's every hope of success. There is a lot to do. All kinds of committed persons have devoted themselves to it. Eden will not happen in a hurry, but a high-level embryonic consciousness is germinating and growing in this world so as to reach a possible full blossoming in a very distant future, Babaji. So in chronological order, this is the second to last one that he talks to her here. Sunday, March 11th, 2001, 8 a.m. You must not be afraid of writing what we dictate to you. A world new and totally different from what you are presently living in, will exist in future centuries. Established a parallel between what life was in the 18th century and what it is nowadays. Where the most advanced people of the times have imagined what exists now in every field. You consider everything abnormal as normal and take it definitely for granted. Similarly, the way to go within the next 2 centuries will be even more amazing. Therefore, you must note down without absolute any reservation, even if you do not understand. A new world is in the offing. You cannot imagine it. It is beyond your comprehension. Your current civilization is built on a few principles that will no longer prevail in the future. Electricity, oil, and byproducts which are used in the present system will be considered as antiques or simply forgotten. A complete revolution will have occurred at every level. If a vestige of your civilization had remained, it might be studied with curiosity. That is the way it is since the beginning of time. Each thing evolves and is renewed. Men end up going to the most glaring extremes. That must therefore be remedied. Everything changes and is transformed. It is in the nature of things, Babaji. So as many of you know, I went through some sort of a health crisis, and I kind of got a handle on it. There was a device used. I had a hiatal hernia, and the chiropractor, I went to this holistic healing, and they used what I think was, ultrasound device, some kind of, energy right around my heart, and I think that triggered my, whatever. And I'll talk about that more in future videos. And then I did this cleaning video because I also thought there might be some surfacing fears that I wasn't aware of that was in my system. Like I haven't felt any sort of fear and panic and things. My panic attacks and phobias have run in my family. A number of my siblings had them. I went through a period with it, but I haven't felt anything like that in years. So I started a playlist on Gratefulness Meditation to clean out fears. I thought this was a good thing, given this day was coming. Like I was waiting for this day. And, so I did the 7th sitting yesterday, the last one, on Friday. And I was going to do the meditation early because we have this Friday night sitting that we do. That's just a half-hour meditation every Friday night at 9 p.m. That comes directly from the source. And so I was going to do that, the other one before that, but I didn't have time. I ran out of time. So I had to do it before bed. And, because you need to have some distance between sittings. You can't just do them right on top of each other, these individual sittings. So the sitting went great. All of them did. And, I felt some fears and some restlessness and some, maybe some, whatever it was, panic come up during the sittings that I was giving the sittings as a preceptor and then receiving them. And I did the 9 p.m. sitting, and it was amazing sitting. I felt really great. And then somewhere around 11 o'clock or so, I thought the heart thing was going to come back. Like it was last Friday I had the second attack. My heartbeat went up to 250 beats a minute. And it went on for 45 minutes. And, I felt like it was happening, but it wasn't. My heart rate was fine. I have this little finger stick my wife had gotten some time ago, and I've been using it. And my heart was great yesterday. No irregular heartbeats. I started having heart issues after COVID. And, I'm sitting there, and I went through a couple of, I was watching something, basketball, and I'm going to show you a clip from a game which is very indicative of where we are as people. That's going to follow this thing. Hopefully, but yeah, it probably will. And so, I was, feeling flipped out, and I turned on the news because I expected that something had happened. Like I could feel and I was wondering if just my knowledge of this whispers prophecy on a subconscious level was kicking all this stuff up. I'm like, but I felt like something was going to happen. And I kept on checking the news, and I finally got tired enough to come in and do the sitting. And the sitting went fine. And then I woke up this morning. My wife got up early. And I woke up, and I had like a little minor sort of panic kind of thing. And I felt really bad for a short period of time. And, I was like the sitting, I had taken the final sitting, and I'm like, well, that sucks. Because the sitting was there to clean out all the fears. And I ended up, my stomach was bothering me, and I, sometimes I have these migraines, which I think this heart thing is connected to my migraines. My body glitches out a bit, and I have to throw up, and I ended up like dry heaving. There's nothing in my stomach, and I felt like better, and I went back to sleep twice, and I woke up around 8:30 or so. It was around 6 o'clock when I woke up, and I was like, I knew something had happened, and then I turned on my phone, I looked at the YouTube videos, and Trump said Iran had attacked. So I knew that this thing, I've been connected to this thing for 20 years, like this event. Like I read about it in the Whispers of Brighter World. I knew it was going to happen. I knew it was going to involve America. And I knew that this stuff was, it's just been there, and here it is, right? I was hoping like maybe it wouldn't happen, whatever. I mean, like I know like all the stuff in the Whispers prophecies and all the things that I've read from this literature all the way back to a book that was written in the 1950s or something like that, 56 maybe was first published, called Reality at Dawn, that talked about how this shitty world that we're in, this fucked up, crazy world, which we all know it's fucked up and crazy, has to go away. It has to end, and something better has to take its place. And the shitty humans that we are have to evolve, and there's going to be a genetic mutation and push us to another level. And that's only going to come through pain and suffering and tumultuous time, right? There's going to be a lot of shit that goes down to make that happen. And there's going to be some remnants of the civilization, obviously, because he talked about a new energy source and these things. There's going to be an alien invasion of something to stop people. Like there's going to be a whole bunch of things that happen. But human beings have all this unrealized spiritual potential, which I am, aware of from my own experiences, my limited experiences with Sahaj Marg system. And it's going to happen, and it has to happen because it has to fucking happen. Everyone can see it. We suck right now, and we're going in the wrong fucking direction. And so, and even if that wasn't the case, eventually you have to rise up to higher levels. You just have to. And this isn't going to be the only evolutionary jump, but there's going to be a major one, and the people of the future are going to look back at us like we're fucking apes, right? Different versions of ourselves, and this is what's happening. So, it's a good thing, but it doesn't feel like that now. Anyways, so there's that. All right. I feel like whatever I was going through was over. Like it just, the anticipation of what was going to come and, whatever I was experiencing, like I'm completely, my body is, adjusted and, adapted and whatever. So there's that. For me, it's it's a relief to have the fucking, this thing start, this new phase started. Like it's just going to be what it is. All right. So, I made a video already here yesterday, and then some of it's building up to this, so it's all included. And so I'm just going to put this whole video up today. Again, this was my sort of day off. And I'll take Sunday off, and then we'll come back Monday with more on this stuff. And, I'll be doing more Whispers of the Brighter World Prophecy stuff and talking more about that. This is just, the initial thing here. Okay, so I did the final sitting. I took the final sitting. I meditated and received the final meditation. I think I talked about giving it, and I'm not sure if I did in the last audio. Today's Saturday, February 28th. Big things have happened. So first of all, the sitting was amazing to give. When you give these sittings, there's some books and training for, how to give a basic sitting. And there was a training done by Master Chargy. And then there was, various books and things and comments and, talking about it and talking to people about it, talking to preceptors. But something like this gathering where it's targeting a specific type of condition, whatever you want to call fear. You don't want to look for fear, right? So it's something that you're cleaning without like searching for a specific thing. Like the ideas that, whatever's there, whatever fear is there, whatever panic, whatever, is blocking somebody's spiritual evolution, whatever's blocking their connection to divinity is being removed. And so there are a couple of ways that was done. And the other piece was, what do you put in its place? There's these suggestions are supposed to be given, spiritual suggestions to replace, of course, transmission replaces anything that's cleaned out. Like the transmission, God's divine energy replaces the space that was occupied by the grossness. Like something is removed and something's got to take its place. And so it's always transmission, but also suggestions are given, helpful suggestions. You read the abhyasa, you read the situation, things that you think might help the other, the person, character qualities, or, whatever it might be. And of course, when fear is removed, you want faith is the number one thing, right? You want, courage and faith, and all these things are, it's a belief that everything's okay. Belief that there's a plan, and no matter what's happening, it's a part of that plan. Because fear comes in when you think something's wrong, you think something's happening when it shouldn't be. You think that there's something that's completely something you don't have the strength to endure, something that overwhelms you, something that is, that's going to make you sort of crumble, and then you develop a fear of this thing happening, right? Something that's beyond your ability to endure, right? So, like when my kids were young, the thought of one of them dying was like, that was it. Like that was the thing that I just couldn't, I was like, I can't handle that. Please don't give me that, right? Whatever. It's things that people have to endure, and that was something I just wasn't willing to let happen. And I put a lot of energy into, the consciousness so that wouldn't happen, right? You can do things to sort of block something from happening, or, by keeping your thought forced on it. But of course, later on, when there was chaos and I was run down and overwhelmed, and, my daughter committed suicide, and, it was, I don't want to say it was more bearable, but the circumstances that had happened over the years, my daughter's, my not being able to see a future for her because she just didn't seem like she could hold a job or complete anything. I didn't see her being able to raise kids. I mean, without some changes. We all go through rough periods where we make bad decisions. I had my real punky era, really just a total piece of shit, where I was like just no redeeming qualities and really no future and just whatever. Angry and, like incompetent, overwhelmed. And, but I was able to adapt and change and rise up to it. And the Sahaj Marg system helped. And for my daughter, Anna, it was, she did the meditation for about a month. At least she went to group meditation. She really didn't do like personal practice. And she was young too. She was 16 years old. So it wasn't like, she was getting to start young. I mean, the Kamlish had relaxed the rules from 18 down to 15, the minimum age. And she, you know, she did it for a little bit, but it didn't stick. And so that was that. But in all that, it became more and more obvious that she, um, she needed to change drastically to be able to have a normal life, to have a happy, healthy, and productive life. And she just wasn't able to do that. So, but as a younger kid, when she was younger, it would have been really hard for me to take. And, I mean, my family had fallen apart by that time, and I was so, I mean, I'd went through the ringer that I was able to endure that. But when the kids were young, that was like something that I just couldn't imagine. And so it's these kind of things that we are scared of, things that could happen, things out of our control, things that, are beyond our capacity to bear the pain. And you develop fears and phobias and things of those things, and, things from past lives or whatever. Maybe you drown in a past life, or you fell off a cliff, and, you come in, you've developed a fear of falling or something, of heights and whatever it may be. So in all that, there has to be the cleaning of the fear and then replacing it with something. And the fourth sitting, part of this thing is praying that the ideas come to you, like how to do a playlist. It's a new thing, and part of it is being able to have ideas come to you, and the other part is allowing divinity to do the work that you can't do, like allow God to come through, and the divine master, and complete the work and do the work, which is how the sittings work in general. That you're inviting God in to do the work that is beyond your ability to see or read or whatever it is. Right? The work is perfect when God is involved, and divinity is orchestrating the work. So the fourth sitting really came together. I was very pleased with it. I was very blissful. It was deep cleaning, very subtle, going to a deep place. And then there was, good transmission, and I thought good, suggestions and things that were there to replace what was removed. And then Friday night, I was going to take the sitting before the 9 p.m. We have the universal sitting every Friday night at 9 p.m. that's given by the Divine Master. And I was going to take that sitting at 9 p.m. and I wanted to do the other sitting before that. You usually need, I think, a 4 to 6 hour gap between the sittings. You can't do them. You have to let the sitting set. But I wasn't able to do that. I ran out of time, and so I wasn't able to do the sitting till I went to sleep. And right before I went to sleep, I've been getting these the rapid heartbeat, and this, maybe, I don't know if they would be called panic attacks, and it's also like a rush of adrenaline where I'm wide awake, and I'm just really awake, and I get energized, and oftentimes it's happening late at night. And I, my heart wasn't racing, but I had the condition that was, that had started when I had that rapid heartbeat. And so that happened, and I started to have a little bit of panic, and I knew this prophecy was going to come due. And so I started checking the news, because I figured, that Trump might have started to bomb Iran, or maybe there was a solar flare that hit on the other side of the world where it was daylight, any of these things, right? These places where it's already morning, and it's, and I went to bed with a little bit of, I don't want to say, I was just unsettled. And then I took the last sitting. I figured after the last sitting I'd feel better. And I was, I took the sitting, it was really, peaceful and blissful. And I fell immediately to sleep. And I woke up, I think it was still dark out. I think my wife woke up early. And I woke up when she got up. It was like 6 a.m. And I woke up and I had like kind of a little bit of a panic attack. And I just, the breathing and the heart was okay, but I was just like kind of flipped out. And then I got nauseous and I threw up. And I, but there's not, dry heaved, which is also, this thing is like a migraine. I'm going these physical things that I'm having now. I'm not having the migraines. I'm having this instead, these glitch outs. And after that happened, I meditated and I felt really good. And I got tired and I fell back to sleep. And I woke up and I fell back to sleep again. And I was really sleepy and relaxed. And I woke up and I saw that Trump had started the war with Iran, which, I was anticipating this whole thing. Because of the whispers of the Brighter World message, I had to walk away from the voiceover for a little bit. And I ended up having a little bit of a physical episode. But let me get back to this and I'll talk about that in a second. So, you know, this thing that this Whispers of the Brighter Word prophecy, 25 years, quarter century, that was given in 2001 on this date, February 28th. And so, I didn't, in the beginning, think it was going to be to the date. And like I talked about this, and I got a voiceover I did today, which I'm going to put in after this one. And then I'm going to do another voiceover probably tomorrow to wrap this one up. And so, this thing happened. And I had, I want to say I was relieved to hear they were bombing Iran because, I have a thing with Libya and Iran. There was people who did the meditation from Iran, and they were all great. And some of them specifically I was kind of close to, and wonderful people. And it's not just them and their families, but it's, how much the U.S. has fucked over their country over the years and the whole thing. I talk about that a lot on my other channel. It'd be good for people who are interested who end up doing this playlist to, if they do this playlist in a year or so. The video is called "The Doomsday Prophecy Has Begun as Nutless Puppet Trump, WWE's WW3, World War III, WWE's World War III as Beatty pulls the strings." And that really, that was what I just came up with on the fly today. But there's, this thing about all of it. And I read a couple of the Whispers messages. You'll hear that in the voiceover in a moment. So I felt a little relieved that it wasn't something that was immediately devastating, like a solar flare or a nuclear bomb going off. That it was something, and I haven't checked the news, but things were escalating today. And also the stars are aligned. There's some kind of energetic thing. And one of my viewers left a comment saying that this was a big day. My wife just said the same thing. This whole, the planets aligning astrologically and the whole thing, which of course these days always end up being like that. But I was relieved that we have more time to, it was confirmation for me, and yet, which I don't really need, but it's just there, motivational, that we're going to have to go through some changes. And for me, it's getting the farm ready, and talking more about these things, the need for spirituality here, and the diving more deeper into the meditative practice. Just all these things, right? Because things get more intense, and then there's like you have to up your game and all that stuff. So my wife and I had a really good day. We went out to eat, and we had talked about like preparing for what if there's a solar flare today or whatever, because they talk about that in the Whispers messages, the poles reversing themselves and all that. And so we ended up having a problem with something, and the problem, like there was various ways to solve the problem, like not a problem that was brought to light by the tumultuous time. And we went and asked some guys some questions about it, and we went shopping for some trees. We had to put up a tree between our path and the newly created path and the bees, as the bees are starting to come out. So that the bees that we want to put some kind of a shrub bush kind of thing there that would block the bees from when we were walking behind the path, or there would be a barrier, right? And we already have stuff. Once the summer starts growing, there'll be a bunch of foliage there, but we wanted to put something in. We found something. And we had 4 or 5 ways to solve the problem. And what we didn't realize is we had something that would solve the problem, but we had lost it. We later figured out we lost it. And we looked for it everywhere, and we had pretty much given up on it. Then we had, 3 or 4 different ways to still solve the problem, but they were all going to be difficult and maybe, cost money and, all these things. None of them really were palatable. And then we found the thing that we lost, and it solved the problem. So it was like a wonderful thing, but we just felt like it was kind of a good day, other than, it's, World War III starting, but sometimes days feel good, and this one felt pretty good. I did have at the end of the day a little bit of an episode, which I've got all these different meds now, and different, not supplements, not meds, but, naturopathic kind of things. And, I'm able to avoid the kind of things that I already had, so that was good. And then I decided that I would do the sitting again, the 7th sitting, which I just did. And my heart rate's great now. It went up a little bit, before, and not for a long period of time, but it was kind of, I was feeling a little unsettled, maybe a little anxiety. But I just redid the seventh sitting because I was, I did it late last night and I dozed off, and I don't know, I just felt like I would redo it. And I just phenomenal. I feel just wonderful. I think this was a big day in a lot of different ways because of the, changes are like there's everything's going to be different. Like, the condition. And this happens with the meditations too, that everything changes after you go to a gathering and these types of things. You just, you come out a different person, and the world is different, and it's vibrating. Your trajectory has changed, and all of a sudden your life is taking like a turn. When you get married or you get a job or you move or you have children. I mean, it doesn't have to be something like that, but there's just times in your life where things change, and you're like, oh, this is never going to be the same. And now with the World War III, that's which is starting to have all the stuff that's happening. That's one thing, but the conditions change. Like there's there's pivotal days, and sometimes there doesn't have to be some milestone or big material event. It just has to be something changes, and you notice it. There's a shift. Sometimes you see people differently. Maybe you've had a friend, someone like the opposite sex, someone you grew up with, and they were always your kind of friend or whatever. And then one day you realize that, there's chemistry there and love, and they're your spouse, and they're there the whole time. You never noticed them, and then all of a sudden there's a change in perspective, right? Or, somebody does something bad to you, or you find out something about them, or just something emerges, and your whole life changes, and because of this, your different point of view of your parent, your dad. You find out your dad was an alcoholic and he's been cheating on your mom, or something like this, right? There's these shifts, where there's like a new paradigm in your life, and these things happen. And for me, it's been this has been this period of time. With my heart racing, my heart getting up to 250 beats, those 2 days, and then, all the things, and just doing the playlist here and all the meditation, all the other stuff. And then, the stuff waiting for the prophecy to happen, and, waiting for this I first read this in 2005. So for 20 years, I knew something was going to come, and I didn't know what the severity was. Again, I'll read the prophecy here because it's a part of this playlist. And I feel really good about this playlist. And, I think over time, these wars always end badly. And, this one, I mean, they might start off good, but, the first two Iraq wars that we had, the first one was, kind of ended in a good way, the Operation Desert Storm. But the second one, Bush was like mission accomplished. I'm going to talk about this in another voiceover. So these are all going on the Journey series. So this will be repetitive, but I talk about this with my, regular viewers. I guess I can put this, well, I don't know. I'll probably just do a new voiceover. Maybe I'll put this at the end of a video. But, the war went south after that. I'll talk about that more specifically tomorrow. The war went south after that. And so, at first it looked like mission accomplished, right? George Bush came in, and then things went south. And, a lot of these wars, a lot of these things, there's repercussions. The stuff that happened with Libya really bothered me. The way they took down Gaddafi, these things. And this thing with Iran, it's not going to go smoothly. It was not done for a legitimate reason. Iran was no real threat. America's screwed over Iran now a number of times. Regime change with Mossadegh in, I believe, the 1960s or 50s. Democratic elected moderate politician. And they took him out and then destroyed the country with the Shah of Iran. And now the country is the way it is because of America. And then all the ways America's been shitty to Iran since, just the tensions and the stuff that America's done, bullying them. Of course, Israel being a part of that, puppeting America, all that stuff. And so with all these things, it's going to end badly. There's no way this thing is going to end well. And, it's part of the Whispers prophecies. It's going to be, this event is going to kick off a series of other events that are going to, destroy the world to whatever extent, right? nuclear bombs. I mean, it's going to lead to nuclear war, and the magnetic field shifting, and a bunch of shit's going to happen, right? Like the whole planet's going to be destabilized. So and you can feel that kind of coming. But anyways, I really feel good about these playlists. So what I want to say is, so when that starts happening, people are going to get mad, and there's going to be hatred. There's already division and hatred, and Trump is, whatever he causes, and I mean just all the anger towards the so-called elite, and now Israel, and there's all this stuff that's happening, and these next playlists, and these playlists take a little, take some out of me. I'm glad to do them. I like doing them. I mean, there's no issue, but I mean they're intense, and you just can't do one after the other. But in a short period of time, there's going to be the need for one with anger and one with hatred, and these things, and so there's going to be need for deeper cleaning and more intense, more commitment to people's practices, people's individual practices. Well, anyways, I'm getting a little tired here. It's already 11 o'clock. I didn't get a chance to finish this when I needed to, but like I said, I'm going to do one more voiceover to sort of sum everything up. I'm going to put that voiceover to that I did today about the Whispers of the Brighter World in here, and there'll be one more, and then I'll put this video up on Sunday, and yeah, that'll be great. Anyways, that's it for now. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Sunday, March 1st. I guess this will be the final voiceover in my for the fear and anxiety playlist. I'm a little bit out of it this morning. I had a little episode last night, and I guess this will be the final audio in the Gratefullness in the 255th journey series. I don't know if I'll put this at the end of my next video too, because it's kind of substantial. But I'll save this audio because I just had a very vivid dream. I had a little bit of an episode again, my third one with the heart thing. It was less than, the heart really only went up like a high for maybe a minute or two. And I'm kind of working on being able to control it, but it's not just the heart thing. It's like a condition. It's like a migraine isn't just a migraine. It's like I'm a different, there's like a different condition. Like I just, it's a lack of serotonin. It's very migraine-esque, where there's other things going on. It's not related to the heart, and the bloating in my stomach too is a factor in these things. But anyways, I did the meditation last night, the 7th meditation, and then I talked about that in another audio. And I really felt better after doing that. And then I had something happen while I was doing the 9 p.m. prayer, which is very odd that something would happen when I'm doing the meditation, the prayer. And then, there's a famous excerpt of Babaji's diary when he was young. Lalaji was working on him, making him making his whatever it was. And he felt what he called 2 jerks to his heart. Lalaji was restructuring his heart. And Lalaji said, if I give you a 3rd jerk, you'll be this, some spiritual, whatever it is. And Babaji said, well, you can do it if you want, but I don't think I'll live if you do. I don't think I'll, it was a jerk to the etheric heart, but it's affecting its physical heart. And so, was sometimes there's things that happen in the Sahaj Marg system. I've always talked about this, that are physical, that are, something you have to go through to, whatever. So I can only hope that this is remaking my heart in some way. And that this is, well worth it. This thing I've gone through, and hopefully it's coming to an end. Been very intense February. And so I went to sleep, and, I slept well. It was like, sometimes when I have things, these things are related to how I felt with COVID, where I was dreading going to sleep because I'd wake up and I would be, just gasping for breath, and, it sucked because, like, I didn't want to go to sleep, and sleeping is how I got better. I always slept when I was sick, and it usually would help me. I'd feel better in the morning, but not with COVID. And so especially the first one. And since then, there's been times that my heart has raced, over these past whatever many years it is, 4 years since I had COVID. I guess I had COVID in 2020, so 6 years. Jesus Christ, 6 years is it? So where I could hear my heartbeat, and when I'd be in bed, and it would kind of bug me for whatever reason when I sort of was holding like a pillow or something to keep my arm up, so it would, I have to hold the pillow somewhere, whatever. Um, but anyways, I slept really well, and then I woke up. My wife got up. I woke up, and I meditated and did the morning meditation, and then I went back to sleep. I did satsang, and I had a very vivid dream with Master Chargy. Since I think there's only been the one where he made me a preceptor. He's been in a few dreams of mine, but that was really vivid and long, as was this one, and significant. Like these were, the one where he was making me a preceptor again in a dream, which, was a whole thing, when I, broke away from heartfulness and all that stuff. And so, in this dream, he was, really old, and he was sick, and he was dying. And he had one old guy taking care of him who looked worse than he did. And the old guy wasn't anybody I knew. It wasn't some, I don't know if it was like somebody who was a servant or whatever. It was like but it wasn't a real person that I knew. That someone was around Chargy. And the old guy said to Chargy, and I went to pay my respects and was talking to him. And, and the old guy said to him, everyone's left you. And Chargy goes, well, I have you, And Chargy, couldn't function. He was old. He can't see well at the end of his life, kind of thing. He would barely see out of one eye. He was blind in one eye, and, he had two kinds of cancer. I mean, when he was old, he was really sick a lot of the time, in a wheelchair, and he would pull it together to visit people and see them, to be out with the people. I mean, the effort that he put. And, his son in Kamlish talked about it before Kamlish had turned on him later on, at the very end of his life. But he said to the guy, all I have is you. And I left, and I was very sad for him, because he always loved being around people. He loved to have an entourage. He had a fear of being alone, and he was just really good in a crowd. And he made himself available as much as he could. He just, he gave people access to him. Everyone wanted to spend time with him. And he did that, up until he died. I mean, physically, he was falling apart, in every possible way. And I heard some about he was going through, and the effort he was still trying to make to be with people, and, all this stuff, and, do whatever he could spiritually for them. He was barely holding it together. He had bone cancer and maybe something, I don't know if it was prostate cancer or some other cancer. So he had two kinds of cancer. And, he had respiratory things where he couldn't breathe. And his whole life he had pain in his leg, which he attributed to a life where he was like Spartacus or somebody famous in the Greek thing, and he had been a slave with chains on his legs. And that he in this life he had pain in his legs that it's pain that he suffered. Kamlish said that the normal person, and Kamlish, of course, was not Chargy's fan, obviously what happened to that later, but he said in this talk, he was yelling at everybody for being, for trying to push their way in and see him. And he said, none of you could bear the pain, physical pain that he's in right now. He's just in physical pain, all the time. But anyways, that wasn't, that was reality. That wasn't part of it. But I was sitting there feeling really sad for him that he's all alone, because he just liked people and wanted to be around them. And that he's only got one person out of all these people, that wanted to be around with his entourage. And at first I was like, they all died. And I'm thinking, they all died. But then I'm like, no, because he's still alive, and he's no longer the master, and Kamlish is the master. And they've left him. They've left him for Kamlish, right? And so, and I'm thinking that I should what if this one guy dies, right? If this one guy dies and he has nobody, I should offer that I would come and take care of him which I didn't think I'd do a very good job at because I'm not like a caretaker, but just I felt so grateful for everything he's done for me. Like I just, it was like all this gratitude and sadness for him, and just, I felt so bad for him. Compassion welled up. And I said I should talk to my wife before I commit to coming to India and living for like, 2 or 3 months or whatever it takes, to help him like, go through the end of life stuff because he's got nobody around him. And I come back and like I offer my services to him because I just feel bad. And, and I forget, like, I don't know if he said anything back to me because then it shifted. And then I was like waking up, but I was still in the dream. And I thought about like, what if like they made me the master or whatever? The first thing I would do is say to all these people that for their disloyalty, that they would suffer, right? Like I would give a speech and talk about how, it was just embarrassing how disloyal they have all been, and how like just after all that he did for them and all the proclaims, all the, I've talked about this in audio, video, whatever it is. And I'm not like a vindictive person because I understand how our tough life is, and I understand like this is a very difficult situation with Chargy and Lalaji because Chargy's, dying wish was don't, not Lalaji, Daji, that Chargy's dying wish was that everyone be loyal to Daji and don't put Daji through what he went through. Like he made sure that there would be a smooth transition. And Daji's the legitimate master of the system and president. He's been endorsed by the Whispers messages and by Chargy. Like he's legitimate. And so, like it's a hard thing for people to get over. It was hard for me because, it's like Chargy suffered so much because of the way that Babaji people treated him because they didn't want him to be the master, and they, whatever. And they, they tried to kill him and poison him, and they, just horrible. And so, there was this thing, and I understand it. And there's no reference to this possibility in the literature. There's no way to guide people for people to figure out how to deal with it. Like a lot of people are meditating on Chargy's form, but they're still doing the Sahaj Marg system, and some people just quit altogether, but they don't know how to deal with it. And so, so I was thinking about, so I'm like halfway awake, and I'm thinking about that. I'm not sure which came first, this idea that I think the last thing was when I thought that I would give a speech and say to them, you guys are all going to suffer for your, for whatever. Because, I felt bad for the pain that they caused him. Like just, whatever pain that, this disloyalty. And I don't know if it is, or certainly, after he died, I don't think it matters to him on a soul level. But, just shitty. But then I think before that, maybe after that, I'm just a little bit unclear. But, because this thing just happened with Trump starting the war with Iran yesterday. For those people listening to this in the future. So the big event that was going to happen, Whispers of the Brighter World, which I don't know how Heartfulness is even dealing with that, because, to the day, 25, quarter of a century, Babaji predicted 2001, that this would be an event that happened that would set off a chain of events that would lead to massive, destruction and overhaul of the system and change everything. And so I don't know if they're even acknowledging that, even though they, Babaji's, Daji's a big Whispers person. So I don't even know what people are talking about or not. So, but in the dream, I remembered there was this guy. And I think I'm like maybe I'm just waking up. It's a little unclear, but it's very vivid. Like, I've retained the dream as much as I can, like every detail. And there's a guy who used to contact me, and he kind of knew that Daji sucked, and like all these people are flipping out. He was sort of a younger guy in the inner circle with Chargy. He was around Chargy and, whatever it was. And he found my videos before I started to criticize Daji. And he contacted me. And he didn't get the truther stuff. Like he was just, the Indian from Chennai, young guy, nice guy, but, just not a truther. But he liked what I was saying about everything else. And then when I started to go criticize Dodgy, there was people there in Chennai all suffering, and he was, aware of it. But he used to post things. He made friends with me on Facebook. He used to post things. It was people who were around Chargy, and he would get access to their diaries. Like they would give him their diaries, and he would publish them. He would publish different interactions they had with them. And he had this one thing he sent to me, and he wrote something to me about it because he was, because of this stuff I was covering as a truther. And Chargy was, he had his master's cottage, and there was somebody out on the porch, and Chargy walked out, and they were alone, which is very odd, which just didn't happen that much where you got one-on-one time with Chargy. And they had a conversation, and it was about like nuclear war. And Chargy said that he was holding the minds of all the people in the world, all the leaders with nuclear weapons, and keeping them calm and keeping them from fucking having nuclear war. Like it was like something he had to do constantly. Like just, there's things that you do with your mind in Sahaj Marg where you might, you have a child and you look after them like there's some distance from you, or they're somebody in your family's going like somebody is in some kind of crisis, and Chargy would wrap his mind around the person, like his thought. He would make sure like it was a way to prevent these things from happening, or whatever it could be, that whatever might happen, at least that God would be with them. I mean, it's things that you can do, not just the master of the system, but we all can do that. You can wrap people in a bubble of love, and make sure they feel supported when they're going through something. If they're not, either they're not physically close, or you're keeping people in your consciousness, right? You're just like your disembodied soul is supporting them, just like you have souls around you that aren't in physical form, like what people call angels, and they can support you through something or help you, whatever it might be. That's why you pray for people. But this is something where you're an active participant in helping or protecting somebody or doing something. An example of this is some guy went to stay at Babaji's house and visit him, and he came and he said, "Can I stay an extra week?" And Babaji said yes. And then he said, "Can I stay an extra 2 weeks?" And Babaji said, "No, he said you didn't lock your door at your house when you left, and I've been keeping my mind on it to make sure that nobody breaks in and steals all your shit, but like I can't fucking do it forever. You gotta go home and fix this." And in India, they have these locks where they have a bolt, because there's a lot of crime in these places, where people go break in your house, and they have bars on the windows and things, in many places so that they can't break through the window. It's like, a different level of thing. Like it's not scary in India, but there's a lot of thievery, right? Like it's it's not like there's thugs and you walk down the street and you're scared of and you're bigger than most of the people there, but they do have a lot of breaking and entering kind of thing. And so they have these metal latches where there's the deadbolt, but around the deadbolt is a metal box so that people can't cut the deadbolt, right? That people can't get access to the deadbolt. So it goes over the door. So when you close, this box goes over the door and hides the lock from people. And what the guy did was he locked the door, but it didn't go into the deadbolt. The deadbolt didn't go into the hole, the metal hole that it's supposed to. And so it seemed like it was locked, but the door was basically open, and it was free. So people just pull it open because he had missed the deadbolt because he wasn't careful or whatever. So he got home, and that's what would happen. So that kind of thing, right? And so I was thinking how, that all these people, Daji included. Now Daji has touched the feet of Modi. He's been after Modi for a while. He wanted validation. Of course, he was hobnobbing with Deepak Chopra, who's now been Epsteined, and he's he kissed ass to every politician and celebrity. He really went after these people. Chargy never did it, and neither did any of the masters. They didn't look validation from famous and powerful people because they were beyond them. They were so much far beyond these people. And so, all these people, Dodgy and these people were all upward climbers. Lots of them, they post on Facebook when Dodgy would bring in somebody famous, I'm not friends with them anymore on Facebook, but they would post pictures of that famous person, whoever it was, with, they'd get a selfie with them so they could show it on Facebook so they could feel like big people. People who need validation from famous people. I mean, I cover it every day here, how these famous and powerful people are lower. Like I was talking about Joe Rogan saying, that, these people are all jealous and they're all criticizing someone who's above them. And I'm like, these people, you're not above anybody. Like, many of us who've had, more than one life, have had many lives, had a life as a king or as a celebrity, and we realized it's a false promise, and it's a distraction away from your soul. Maybe something you have to go through to realize that being rich and powerful isn't your goal here. But everyone's going to, in their first couple of lives, they're going to look up and they're going to say, if only I was rich and powerful, I'd be so happy. And then they have a life like that and they realize they're not, hopefully. But some people just get stuck in it and they just continue life after life, and they're, looking for false gold, looking for fool's gold, right? And I was thinking how these lackeys, a lot of these inner circle people, a lot of the Indians are Republican. It's like Kash Patel, and there's that guy who ran for president or whatever his name was. I forget what his name was. Bobby Jindal, remember that guy, Bobby Jindal. But there's a lot of Indians that become Republicans. It's because they're very conservative in their country, so it makes sense. And they go over the top, like Kash Patel dancing with the partying with the hockey. They're just over the top. And I thought about how all these guys, Dodgy and his people that used to be around Chargy, they all were around Chargy, not because they loved him or they were grateful for what he did or they loved the system. They just, or maybe they did a little bit, maybe there was something there. They had a spiritual side too. But part of it was that they were upward climbers and they just wanted to be around the master because he was a big, important man. And they would all, they'd be all lackeys to Trump and Modi and Netanyahu, and they'd all be endorsing this thing. Many of them are anti-Muslim, they're Hindu, Dodgy doing the RSS, which was a paramilitary, this thing I talked about recently in a video audio. And so I was thinking about how they all would just be, even though they know that there's a whispers message saying that this is going to fucking bring down the world, but they'd still be kissing his ass. And that's when I thought about how I would say, if I was, not that I want to be the master or anything like that, that's not, but if I were, and even though I don't like to be vindictive and I like to, I understand how hard it is to be a human being. And I have my own, I'm not above my own, my own just struggles with how, embracing my spiritual side. Like we all struggle with it. Like we all have our human side. So I'm not, I don't care about these other people's, their indiscretions. It's between them and God, right? That's how I make all these things. You can pray for people to suffer and you can curse them. I mean, there's all these things you can do. The whole Mahabharata exists, the whole story is based in multiple curses that create this story. Without the curses, there'd be no Mahabharata. Like these Indian saints, and there's one like particular guy who's just like kind of grumpy and he's just cursing everybody all the fucking time. Right? And these curses, create the conflict in the thing. So, and you can do spiritual warfare, you can do all that stuff, but I'm not, like I don't even think about it. Like it's not something that's none of my business. I don't get into a situation where I'm, the judge and jury or, whatever it is. Like it's between them and God. Like unless something was ordered to me or whatever, there'd have to be something where I felt was, I was given instructions to do something, spiritually. But for the most part, I think that things are going according to plan. And it's just the way it is. I mean, it is painful for me to watch these pieces of shit in the heartfulness thing, destroy the Sahaj Marg system, which I've talked about. But anyway, so I had that thought, like, I would say to them, like, this is bad what you did. Like, the people who are disloyal to Chargy, like some of them are just confused. They don't know what to do. But then some people have just jumped ship over to Dodgy, and then they're allowing Dodgy to destroy Chargy's legacy, even participating in it, right? So somebody, the Dodgy Truther, told me that he talked to a couple of the people at the ashrams that were managers of the ashram, and Dodgy told him to destroy all Chargy's books, all of his published books that were there, just destroy all of them. And the people didn't want to do it, and they said, well, I'll get somebody else to do it. Like, I'll fire you and get someone else there if you're not going to do it. So like that's fucked up shit that he did. So anyways, so the first thing is, so I wake up and I'm like, I meditated for about 5-10 minutes, but I wanted to make sure I retain this dream, right? And I looked at my phone, and there was an email of someone who written me about the Sahaj Marg Gratefullness. I don't know what it was. And I, just scanned it because I was just groggy waking up. And it was a young woman who, I guess she had done Heartfulness when I talked about it years ago. And then she left and started doing Gratefulness with me, and then went back to Heartfulness with Dodgy. I think this is what it said. I'm not, I'm paraphrasing. Usually I wouldn't say anything, but it was, part of it, this whole thing. I wouldn't say something about email. And the end of it, she said something like she had just done this fear and this playlist. She had just done all the meditations and had a profound experience with it, which I'm sure people would, because it's an intense time. I mean, it's not an accident. And she was reading, I guess, said something about being a Christian and trying to understand that needing a guru and these things, and I guess asking me to be her guru. And I'm like, that's not possible, because, I'm not a guru. Like, I can't be something that I'm not, right? Like, I just don't have the personality for it, but I am a preceptor in that sense, the way preceptors used to be. I mean, that's what I'm doing now with Gratefulness Meditation, and that's, it's not a guru, but it's, somebody who, helps guide people and do that. So, that is, basically what I'm doing with the, I'm keeping the thing alive, So, but I, in terms of that was all interesting that came, like, that was the first thing I saw when I woke up. All right, so, I guess that's going to wrap this up. I don't know what else to say here. This is the end of at least 2 videos, the 250th edition of the Journey series. This is going to go in that, as well as the, the playlist. But I very intense time, and I can see that there's a need for, when things go south, like I was saying, this thing's going south. Like, it just can't not go south. I mean, aside from the predictions and the prophecies and what Babji says is going to happen, if you just look at Trump and Netanyahu and what's happening and the way they're going about a war with no real justification, and, all the bad things that have happened in the past with regime change, and it might not happen immediately, but it happens. And, that this is, there's a woman, her name is Catherine Austin Fitz, and I'll talk about this a little bit on my regular channel too today. But she was interviewed by Tucker Carlson. Now, she used to be, she was one of the, good guests Alex Jones used to have on. Like, Alex Jones used to have quality guests when he was the only game in town. I guess she has her own thing now. I told my wife about her, and she listens to her. She was in charge of the finances under, like, Reagan or somebody. What Bush won, I don't know. She was a Republican, and she was, she had some kind of job in the federal government. And she talks about, this in terms of finances. And she was talking about this war in terms of the central banks, and that Iran was outside the central bank system, and all these wars were, the thing I talked about in a video recently, where Wesley Clark said we're going to invade 7 countries in 5 years, and all those countries they weren't aligned with the central bank. This digital currency that they want to do, in the global banking system, and the, petrodollar, where you sell American, where you sell oil in the American dollar. Of course, I've talked about this significantly, quite a bit, with Libya, and how Gaddafi wanted to start a gold dinar to sell his oil in a gold dinar, which was a, Arabic Muslim currency, and get away from the petrodollar, and that's why they took him out, right? Because they couldn't have that. These are financial wars, and so that's part of what's happening here. And she talked about how Iran was supplying China with all this oil, and that China's pissed now because of this BRICS thing, and they're trying to get away from America's hold on oil and the petrodollar. And, Iran was selling this oil, and they have all these resources to China outside of the petrodollar. And that is a part of it, right? And so when you do something like this, you don't care what happens to the people of the country. You have to take it away their government, because it always fails. Like, it always goes south. They have thug rule, gang rule. You try to put in a puppet that never takes. It just, there's no, like Trump saying to the people in Iran, go and take over the government, and you guys will just, like they can, creating the government is hard as fuck, right? I talked about this. This is why I say it's pointless to fight back the way some truthers think we should fight back, because you can take down a government. Like, that's somewhat easy. It's not all that easy, but we could take down the American government. The American people could just get rid of the government the way it is. Just like, go full mob. And, the people have it in them to do it. Like, you need cooperation and anger and hatred to rise to such a level. And just take down, they kill all the leaders. I mean, this happens in kingdoms. You've seen it happen in communist China, in communist Russia. You've seen what happens. And there's some kind of movie I was watching where, they're showing all these people just being executed by the angry mob in China when they took over. All these people, sometimes they're just college professors, people with and just all the torture and all the shit they were doing to force people to adapt to their new party. But, installing a government, I mean, you think of what happened in those places, and you think of how Russia is now and China is now, and where they were when they threw over the monarchy. It's not better, right? A lot of people have suffered, and there's no rule of law, and you have to get everybody on board, and you usually have to be very violent to get everyone to agree, and not everyone's going to agree, and it's never some utopia. It's not like it gets fucking better. It never gets better. That's the problem. Like, you can take down a bad government, and maybe you should, but replacing it's almost impossible. And you look at all these regime change places, but none of that stuff matters, because, you're destabilizing a country because they're not cooperating with your financial hierarchy, your whatever you're doing, your financial, tyranny that's happening, and all the rest of it, your system that you're trying to impose on everybody. But, there's laws, there's spiritual. It's not backed by God, and God clearly, the plan is, according to Babaji, like, he did this work as a spiritual master, Babaji, the second master of the Sahaj Marg system, that he did this work, and this work was done to, take down a system, and he was ordered to take down this system. This is back in the 1950s and 60s. Do the spiritual work so this would happen, and that there would be a new system that would come out of it, out of the bones and ashes of the current system. It'd take hundreds of years, and there's going to be extraterrestrial, like alien interventions, and there's going to be a genetic mutation, and like a lot of shit's going to happen, and people embracing their spiritual nature, and a reduction of population, and chaos, and just a world that doesn't resemble anything like we have now. Like, it's just going to all be transformed in a way to motivate people to embrace their higher nature and evolve and go to a higher level, which is a painful process. Evolution's painful. Spiritual evolution particularly is painful physically, and just every possible way. It's just painful to you're like forced to become something out of pain and suffering, out of trauma and crisis. You're forced to rise to a higher level. Like, it's just unfortunately the way that happens here. Not unfortunately, it's just that you're given a blessing. You're able to jump leaps and bounds where it would take, with no resistance in the spiritual plane of existence, it would take many, many, many more years to get the kind of evolution you can get here, when where you're molded and forged in pain and suffering. Right? That's just what happens. That's what it is, right? It's just there for people. And so, this is what we're going through, and that's what's happening. And you got this, complete bonehead in Trump who's just, thinks he's great, and he's always been a failure, a loser, a guy who goes bankrupt, a guy who runs things into the ground, a guy that's selfish and abuses people, and then rearranges reality to make him feel like he's successful. A guy who's just built for failure, and he just keeps on failing upwards so he can fail at a higher level, and now on a global level, right? And with the world, collapse of the system being a part of it. Anyways, that's a good note to wrap all this up. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely important for the Apocalaughs and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.